Good evening, everyone, and welcome to American Advocates. I think this is episode 26 or 27 now, and I'm going live to discuss what we will be seeing tomorrow out of President Donald Trump. He's set to take the stage and give a State of the Union address tomorrow. It should be a very interesting one. Now, technically, he did this last year, but technically, he didn't. Last year was under a different set of circumstances, and it wasn't actually officially a State of the Union address because it was too early for him to address the State of the Union. But it was done in the same kind of a manner, and it was very electric last year. Last year's State of the Union address was full of energy and passion and victory, and it was exciting, and everything just felt like we were winning still, and Trump was just getting started, but he had gotten so much done already that was actually good, fulfilling a lot of campaign promises up front, and the energy was infectious back then. I remember feeling inspired and motivated during that speech, like we had just saved the nation. However, fast forward a year later, and what we're going to be getting out of the State of the Union address in 2026 will definitely be a lot different of a story. It's definitely going to feel a lot different with a lot of different undertones. It'll be still delivered in the same way that he delivered his speech last year, but I think the effects of it are going to be drastically different. I don't think it's going to be very well received by a lot of people like his State of the Union address last year, which, like I said, wasn't actually definitively a State of the Union address last year. I think it's going to be received differently than it was last year, and what we're going to see is a speech once again that will be full of the what we've come to expect out of Trump and what many people have come to love out of him, self-aggrandizing talk. And I think the problem is going to be, honestly, that while that was cutesy and funny last year, and while that really riled up the base in a good way last year, I think a lot of people have a bit of a fatigue when it comes to this administration already, when it comes to campaign promises not really being fully delivered on, and a lot of issues plaguing this nation that don't seem to be getting addressed by this administration. And so the self-aggrandizing talk that is infectious at first and that really draws a lot of people to Trump at first, myself included, is not going to be so enjoyable. It's not going to be so well received this time around. You're going to hear stuff from him basically like, we saved this nation, or the Biden regime, what they did to this country, it was criminal. It was criminal. And you're going to see and hear a lot of Biden references once again. And it's going to be exhausting, in all honesty. We're at a point now, in my opinion, where it's time for this administration to stop with the Biden comparisons, to stop referencing Biden. I'm of the belief that it's perfectly acceptable in the first year of any administration to reference the prior administration, especially in the context of pointing out errors that administration has made. But after a constant 1 year of being bombarded with that, and of everybody coming to understand and know and accept, in my opinion, the fact that Biden did fuck this country up quite a bit, made several big mistakes in this nation that are still hurting us to this very day. But the time limit on that should have expired now. And I think the fact of the matter is, in the State of the Union address speech tomorrow, we're going to hear him talk about Biden, Sleepy Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, what that administration did, that Biden administration. I call him the auto pen. He's not even really a president. He was just an auto pen. And what he did to this country it's criminal, honestly. I mean, it's criminal. We're going to hear that. And it's like, okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you saying that last year. I appreciated you saying that 10 months ago. But now what I want is for the administration to focus on itself internally. Get it together. Fix this country. Tell us what you're doing that's good, and own up to the fact that you've made mistakes and promise to correct them. But we're not going to get that out of him. We're going to get, I won all 7 swing states on a popular mandate. And then you're going to be forced introspectively to look at that and ask yourself, well, what have you done with that mandate? And that's what this episode tonight is about. What has this Trump administration done with the popular vote mandate that it received, winning all 7 swing states, shifting every single state in America more red? Every single state voted for Trump and shifted more red. Even states like California and New York lost liberal ground and became less blue, more red, is what I mean. And so what has this administration done? You're going to hear stuff in the State of the Union address speech tomorrow. He's going to say stuff like, we ended transgender for everyone. And, he's going to say, men aren't playing in women's sports anymore. We ended that too. And the fact of the matter is, though he tried, though he signed the orders, the fact of the matter is, it's not true. It's just not true. There are still transgender procedures and surgeries happening. There are still issues with transgenderism in this country. We are still watching men sign up and play for in women's sports. There are rogue governors in these Democrat states that are still allowing this, and they're defying this administration. And why are they doing that? It's because this administration is toothless, and the Democrats now have learned it. And the sad reality is that when Trump became the president-elect in November of 2024, we saw in Washington, D.C., according to Google Tracker of Google searches, we saw I think it was a 75 or 80% increase in people looking up criminal defense attorneys. The shitstorm that the Democrats and the corrupt politicians were expecting to occur as a result of Trump being voted in had them researching in late 2024 and early 2025 criminal defense attorneys. And you fast forward now to over a year later. He's been sworn in. He's had an entire year in office. And what have we gotten? Nothing. We've gotten next to nothing when it comes to justice, prosecutions, investigations, and I'm going to cover all of that on this episode because he certainly is going to be overlooking and glossing over a lot of the stuff that his administration has not addressed. You won't hear too much from him about Epstein tomorrow. You won't hear too much about him when it comes to deep state arrests. And if he mentions it at all, he will no doubt, with his weakness for women being evident at this point, he will no doubt sickeningly glaze Pam Bondi and tell us all that she's doing a wonderful job. And that's going to make me and hopefully a lot of other conservatives sick when he does it, if he does it. Hopefully he's smart enough to just not talk about it at this point. But when it comes to the transgender stuff, he did sign some orders. It's not happening though. It's still, he didn't end it. So he's going to say he did, and it's just not true. One of the things that will be true that he'll mention will be the border security. Hello, everyone. I see people in the chat. Open borders have consequences. I agree, Walter Peters. He will say he shut down the border. That's pretty true. And that's something that we give him props for, honestly, on this channel and pretty much anywhere else. He's done a great job with our southern border, especially, and the data behind that is pretty undeniable. So when he glazes his work on the southern border, and when he says, "Oh, we've stopped illegal immigration from coming into this country," that I give him some credit for. It's mostly true when he says that, and he's done good work on that border. It's pretty undeniable, actually, and it's been one of the few very successful things that he's pulled off in his administration so far. So he will say that, and that one we give him credit for. Some of the other topics he'll no doubt be discussing, though, in his State of the Union address tomorrow will be mass deportations. Hello, everyone. I see more highs are coming in. Please be sure to like the stream if you haven't already, especially if you're agreeing with the messaging. If you're not agreeing with the messaging, then please dislike the stream and never come back. But the fact of the matter is he's going to be discussing mass deportations tomorrow, right? And that's going to be a big topic because it's one of the major campaign promises that he made to everyone while he was running for this second administration. So definitely dodge Hellcat. Definitely dodge Hellcat. So what he's going to do is he's going to say, we've deported people. And his messaging has already changed on this, right? And so what we're going to see is him kind of already using the State of the Union address, no doubt, to double down and to really enforce that messaging change of this administration. He will tell us that he's deporting the worst of the worst, making America safer for everybody. And the fact of the matter is that's really only half true at most. The bottom line is what I voted personally for Trump for, and I think what a lot of Americans were led to believe Trump would be doing if we voted for him on this topic of immigration, which most young men did, by the way. Most young men of any demographic, they recognize the severe threat of open borders and mass immigration into a country, right? America's for us. It's our country for our future. And we're the ones being replaced, especially young Americans. We're the ones being replaced by all of these people coming into this country. And so we really wanted Trump to deport the illegal immigrants. And honestly, I am of the belief that we need a full-blown immigration moratorium. We need to shut down immigration in this country for the next decade or two, up to 20 years at least, really, because we're suffering right now as Americans as we're being replaced. And I'm going to cover H-1Bs later on in this stream too. So I agree with you on a shutdown on immigration. Thank you, Gary the Snail. Gary the Snail, listen, I am actually saying a few good things Trump did today. I know you're Mr. Positivity down there, and you've complained about my negativity. I actually, believe it or not, in my day-to-day life, I'm an optimist. And I think that's why my stream has really shifted in tone, because I really voted for Trump very optimistically. And I recognize the good that he's done, Gary, but there's just so much I'm disappointed in. Maybe I just bought in too much to his hype, you know? So I know, just for your sake, I'm going to let you know this will be a mostly negative stream, Gary, but I am covering a few of the good things he did. I mentioned the border security and how Trump really did perform very well with the southern border in his term. But we're going to be covering I'm covering what Trump's going to cover in his State of the Union address speech tomorrow. And there's going to be a lot of stuff he's going to say, and it's just like, it's going to be propaganda. I don't know how else to word it, but that's really what it is, and that's why I'm live right now to discuss that. So when it comes to mass deportations, he's going to say the worst of the worst. He's going to use this as an opportunity to double down on the worst of the worst messaging change, because the bottom line is, we're retreating. This administration's retreating from Minnesota. They're going to be pulling out more and more agents while he's delivering the speech, in fact. We saw Greg Bovino get yanked. We saw, what's his name? Tom Homan get sent in as a PR kind of control. You know, go in there, Tom Homan, you look tough, you sound tough, you say tough things. Go in there and make it look like we're not surrendering, when really that's what we're doing. That's what's happening. It's a surrender. It's a surrender to the Democrats in that state. They protested. They created a color revolution. They capitalized off of it, and they toppled this administration doing so, using Alex Preddy, Renee Good, and media outrage to force, because Trump didn't have to, but he capitulated, to force this administration into surrendering in Minnesota. And with it, the mass deportation agenda officially died that day when they announced that they were doing this. And it died when they changed the messaging, which is, again, what I'm saying he's going to be doing. The worst of the worst. The fact of the matter is, the worst of the worst is a great place to start, but it's not good enough. We want all illegal immigrants deported out of this country, and you won't be hearing that from Trump tomorrow in his State of the Union address. He won't be there to tell you that we're deporting every single illegal immigrant out of this country, because he's not, and he never is going to be. It's not popular. It's too unpopular with independents, and it's really too unpopular with independents because this administration did not foresee the midterm consequences that would result in attempting to deport millions of illegal immigrants on an annual basis. And they did not control the messaging good enough early on, and it's been hijacked, and it's been taken over by liberals and the media, and it's been used against this administration. And now with the midterms this year coming up, this administration has cut off its own balls in an attempt to allow Republicans to maintain as many seats as possible in Congress, in the House, so that they don't have to deal with impeachment trials. It's all going to be in vain, but that's where we're at with that. I'm going to swig some more. I'll take a look at some chats. I see Keystone Liberties down there. I'll read that in a second. Before I continue on here with the monologue, pointing out everything that he's going to be discussing tomorrow. Isolationism, you think that's the root? I do, JC. Listen, it's so crazy, this journey that I've been on. And it's actually, I know most people won't do this, and I don't blame you, but like, this channel's not even 1 year old. And I've always been a politically inclined person. Even when I was 14 and 15 years old, I was the one in my school saying like really controversial stuff that upset women and, you know, all kinds of phony feminized Christians in this country that aren't real Christians, that don't actually have strength in their beliefs. I've always been that way to some degree, but it had to be tempered obviously back then. And, you know, I had to temper it to work regular 9-to-5s at one point in my life. And truthfully, I've always understood this concept. It's better to be a fisherman than to meddle in the politics of man. That's something along the lines of a wise quote. I think it's like an Aristotle era quote of some sort, or Plato or something, and it's true. And knowing that, I've always tried to like resist the urge to get politically involved. And I hit my breaking point somewhere around COVID, voted for Trump, and then I decided to create this channel last March. And back when I created this channel, Trump was doing great. And I hadn't been involved. Like, I was very into conspiracy theories when I was a teenager, but I kind of stopped looking into them in my 20s. I had dreams I was pursuing then, in life that I was getting started with. And now I'm back, right? And the journey that I've been on with this channel in under a year has been crazy. When I started this channel, I was like, no, we can allow immigrants in this country. I mean, there's good, and it's true. There are good people all across the world. We can allow them in here. They have a chance at a better life. We definitely don't want to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, you know. We have great allies in the form of NATO and in the form of Britain and in the form of Canada and the UK and Israel and blah, 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 right? Like these are all beliefs that I had going in because I had just been removed. I self-removed from myself from politics for so long. And it really didn't take long for me to pretty much take a 180-degree turn on most of my beliefs inside of the Conservative Party, right? I'll always be a social and fiscal conservative. That's the only route that makes sense. If you're a smart and educated person and you're a true American and you believe in America and its principles, you're a conservative nowadays. There's just no way around it, especially if you're a Christian like I am. But yeah, I've changed a lot. I would have said isolationism. I would have said last year isolationism is foolish, and now here I am saying, you know what? We might need to go that route. We might need to. We should shut our immigration down entirely. And I take a look at how a lot of our allies are behaving and reacting towards us. And I've brought this up as a point of reference in a question several times now in the past like 3 or 4 months. Are our allies even our allies anymore? Look at their behavior, not what they say, not our agreement on paper, not even the history of what we've done for each other. It's been a lopsided one. We've done way more for them than they have for us. And yes, that includes Israel. And yes, that includes all of our NATO allies. And yes, that includes Britain. And it definitely includes Canada too. We've done way more for them than they have for us. But you know, each one of them you can point to certain points in time where they have genuinely and sincerely helped us. It's true. Especially during the Middle East wartime era. But put that aside and look at modern day and look at their actions and ask yourself, are they our allies? Do they actually like being our allies? Or are they trying to subvert us in every single way and undermine everything about us? And that's where I'm at with that. And I think the answer is obvious, by the way. If you pay attention to geopolitics at all, the answer is obvious. I'm almost really asking that rhetorically. Gary the Snail says, I support our president, but I am tired of him putting the same people down over and over again and bragging about stuff. I'd rather he just do his job at this point. And that's a fair assessment, Gary, and that's kind of where I'm at as well. It's time for him to, you know, the cartoonish figure that Trump is, that's amusing and that works. It's it's genius marketing, in all honesty. It works. It's impossible to target Trump in any sort of, detrimental way because he just doesn't care, and it's amazing. And I loved it at first. But yes, I agree. It is time now for him to really put the pedal to the metal, and it's time for him to change his tone and his delivery method in which he delivers his messaging, that needs to change too. I am disappointed in some things. Yeah, definitely. Let me see what Keystone says. The Trump administration's affection with Nicki Minaj is totally pathetic. Yeah, I'm not too focused on that. It is what it is. I'm not gonna, there's so much more to be outraged over, but I understand where you're coming from on that. I won't disagree with you. I won't disagree with you on that. All that because of one man with greed, says Tattooed Skunk. Which man? Who are you talking about? Okay. Oh, let me view this message because it's been hidden. Actions speak louder than words. He's flooded the zone and is a pedo criminal. What do you mean? Who, Trump? Yeah, Trump's definitely not a pedo. I think that should be made pretty clear right now, as it is with the Epstein files being released and what information's been put out there. I think it's pretty obvious that he's not a pedo. Now, he's been complicit in the cover-up of the Epstein files. I'm going to cover that in a minute here. But I'm going to get back on topic now here. And what I want to point out, basically, when it comes to the mass deportations and what he'll talk about tomorrow, what you won't hear him say. Here's the hard facts of mass deportations in this country and what's happened under this administration. They're going to say that they've deported like at least 2 million. 2 million is going to be around the number estimated here in his first year that they will tell you have been deported. Here's the bottom line. We don't know how accurate the self-deportation numbers actually are. I think they're being blown out of proportion. I don't blame any administration for overhyping their numbers. Every administration does this. And so they're going to say something along the lines of 1.2 to 1.5 million self-deportations. That's probably the number they'll go with. They might even try to claim 2 million self-deportations. I don't buy it. There's no way that they're tracking that accurately. And there definitely have been self-deportations. This administration implemented a policy that actually pays people to self-deport, and it pays them $2,600 to do so, essentially free plane tickets home with extra left over. And so people have taken that offer up, especially early on in this administration when everybody thought this administration actually meant business this time. And the fear index, not the economic fear index, but the fear index amongst illegal immigrants and corrupt politicians was at an all-time high. We thought retribution was coming. We thought mass deportations were going to happen. Alligator Alcatraz was being built, and people saw this and they said, oh, I got to get out of this country, with the promise of being able to reapply for citizenship or a visa the proper way, of course, if you do. So people did self-deport, but the number is going to be blown heavily out of proportion. And when you set aside the self-deportations, because at the end of the day, no matter what the number of self-deportations is or winds up being, in actuality, the real number you want to look at as far as the pacing goes for what we can expect out of the next 3 years is just the regular deportations, because self-deportations may have started off sky high with the momentum of this administration taking office, but it's going to scale down quickly. It's going to trail off very quickly. So next year, I wouldn't expect all that many self-deportations to occur, or I should say this year. So then the actual deportations. And according to the Department of Homeland Security website, that number currently sits at somewhere in the 600,000 range. They estimate, I believe, 675,000 reported deportations. But inside of that number, one of the problems also is the fact that they're counting turnarounds at the border. They're also they're adding in, they're inflating that number even as well. And they're also not counting, which I believe we should count, the amount of new immigrants that we allowed into this country. Not to be a doom and gloomer, but if you remove the amount of turnarounds, being people who approached the border and were promptly turned around by Border Patrol, that number quickly drops by a lot. Very likely, it drops down into 300,000 or less deportations. And then you add in the amount of immigrants who have come into this country legally under this administration this year, since he has not shut down our border entirely. He has not shut down immigration like I would like him to. And that number could be anywhere between 250 to 400,000 new immigrants in this country. When you factor in all of that math, we very likely have had maybe 200,000 deportations total, 275,000 deportations total. And when you factor in the amount of immigrants who have come into this country, we could actually wind up being at a net positive when it comes to new immigrants in this country. Of course, some of them, or most of the new immigrants, would be legal under this administration. But the bottom line is we need an immigration moratorium, and we're not going to get it. And when it comes to the self-deportations, when it comes to the actual deportations happening, it's not at the correct pace that it needs to be for this administration to make an actual difference in this country when it comes to 24 million illegal immigrants in our nation. This administration needs to be deporting, and that means finding them, rounding them up, arresting them, prosecuting them quickly with an immigration judge, right? Giving them a trial with an immigration judge in their cell in Alligator Alcatraz in an expedient fashion and deporting them. That's what I count as a deportation. That number would need to be at 1.25 million per year, in my opinion, in order for this administration to be putting a real dent in our illegal immigrant problem. 24 million illegal immigrants. This administration needs to come to an end in the next 3 years with 5 million deportations of illegal immigrants. It's not going to happen at this pace. It's just not going to happen. And I don't count turnarounds. Turnarounds are wonderful. Glad to know Border Patrol's doing its job. But a turnaround is not a deportation. They never really entered this country. They never were a detriment to our economy or to the everyday American. They weren't taking our jobs. They never made it in. And so that's an Obama era policy. I believe it was during the Obama administration or maybe even Bush. But I think it was Obama where they started counting turnarounds towards the deportation number. They shouldn't be. And so they come up with 675,000, but turnarounds don't count in my opinion. So that number's way lower. And again, factor in the amount of immigrants coming into this country legally, because at this point it doesn't matter. And we're at net positive immigration once again in this country, and we're not at a position right now where Americans can afford that. But Trump will tout that number, and you're going to hear Trump say 2 million or 1.5 million or something of the effect. And you just have to understand that it is propaganda. It is propaganda with numbers being blown out of proportion. And yes, deportations have happened, but no, mass deportations are no longer happening, and they're very likely going to continue to not happen. Not even close. It needs to be 4 million a year to make a dent. That's pretty unrealistic, though, honestly, Howard. I mean, I would love that, but the fact of the matter is, I don't see any administration being able to achieve 4 million in a year. right? Like Obama actually outpaced Trump on deportations, and Obama ended he ended his 4 years from 2012 to 16 with I think 3 or 3.5 million in 4 years, and he was a Democrat, so he could have done more if he was conservative, maybe. But 4 million in a year, the number that you need to be doing, you would need over 12,000 deportations a day, I think, in order to achieve that. That's, I mean, I don't see how that's possible. Though I kind of, it would be more ideal, yes. I mean, if you're trying to multiply 4 times 4, we're factoring in 16 million deportations. Yeah, that's a massive dent on the 24 million total that are likely in this country. But I would settle for 5 because it would still put a big dent in. And if Trump actually, if this administration was actually fulfilling its promises properly, we'd have a good chance of winning 2028 with conservatives again, hopefully getting another good candidate to go from 2028 to 2032 with another 5 million deportations, and that would put us at 10. But unfortunately, with 24 million illegal immigrants, I just think it's going to take, I think it's going to take a long time. I think it's going to take a very long time to actually fix that problem, and it would need to span over several administrations, which is why it's so crucial that this Trump administration actually does a good job. Because if they do a good job, they set the right tone to win future elections, for conservatives to win future elections. And when conservatives get in, they continue on the mass deportations. We all know what happens if a Democrat's elected in office in 2028. They hate white people, they hate Americans, they hate men, and they want to replace us with foreigners. They will reopen the borders, and they will get rid of. They're already talking about getting rid of ICE the next time they have power. So we already know what's going to happen if a Democrat wins. And that's why it's so important Trump does well. And he's not doing well. And he's going to say he's doing well tomorrow, and that's why I'm live. Because I'm here to point out the reality. I'm here to point out simple facts and reality here when it comes to what this administration has and hasn't, most importantly, been doing. Yeah, sure, I'm just talking numbers. I realize it's not realistic. Yeah, no, I understand. I'm with you. I'm with you in spirit. Trust me. I wish it was 4 million a year would be wonderful. Okay. Trump will also go on to say he's ended 7 or 8 wars. Most of those were skirmishes, of course. They were battles. They were temporary. They were conflicts that were ended quickly. At first when he was doing that, I didn't care. He was still fulfilling a lot of campaign promises early last year. But we're at a point now where we're tired of the foreign policy stuff. And he's going to have to double and triple down on foreign policy procedures tomorrow, because the bottom line is that's all he really has to his name at this point. Once again, we've witnessed under this administration his attention being diverted away from America and its problems and its people and overseas. Once again, we're just seeing that continually. By the way, please double tap your screen right now to like the stream if you haven't already. It really helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. He's going to go on to brag about Venezuela under that blanket of foreign policy, as he should. I'm actually a big fan of what we did in Venezuela, and I've made that very clear on this channel from the start. I was the one calling out the fact that these were not fishermen and fishing boats being blown up. All it took was a couple satellite images zooming in to see food grade barrels, blue barrels full of God knows what, being transported on those boats to understand these were not humble Venezuelan fishermen farmers. And I was also one of the first people out there, as far as I know, to actually uncover the truth of what was happening in Venezuela, which was, of course, all about Chinese influence, which is a good thing. The one thing this administration's really done well, if we're not talking about border security and not allowing illegal immigrants to continue coming into this country, despite allowing legal ones in still, the one thing that he's done great is he has done a pretty good job, at least, of playing chess against China on the global stage. And Venezuela was one of those examples. Most people do not know what's going on in Venezuela or what was happening there. Even to this day, I don't think, but I put out the info. It's verifiable info. China was increasing their presence in Venezuela. China has a very sneaky global financial strategy they use to essentially conquer countries like Venezuela without even firing a single bullet. And what they do is they wait for these countries to go into economic crisis, and then they loan them tens of billions or hundreds of billions sometimes of dollars to enslave them in debt, which then bends that country to their will pretty much permanently, which is what China did to Venezuela. They had loaned Venezuela, I believe, something to the effect of $68 billion, with no hope of Venezuela ever being able to pay that back. So China said, no problem. Your country is one of the best countries with the most oil reserves, even if it is crude sour oil. We'll take it, and we'll take it at a heavily discounted price. And so Venezuela was forced into a position to sell their oil very cheap to China, which of course we don't want China benefiting from that relationship at all. They're all about global dominance. They hate America, and they make that open. They don't even hide that, right? And also, on top of that, China was developing telecom infrastructures in Venezuela and creating new seaports and shipyards in Venezuela as well. They were using Venezuela as a possible future proxy point in their Cold War, which is really what we're in with China now, their Cold War against us. And Venezuela is just a little too close to home for that. So Trump's actions in Venezuela were not only necessary, but I think amazing, and served as a great reminder to the rest of the world that, despite the fact that America is currently in crisis for several different reasons, we are still the world's fucking hyperpower. And every country will fear us. We kidnapped a world leader with ease and brought them back to Nicolas Maduro, brought him back to New York City in a prison. And we did it in just a few hours without any casualties. So I actually like that. As a young American, especially, I love that. So Trump will talk about that for sure. He knows it's one of the popular things, especially with younger people, and rightfully so. And we give him praise for that. He'll brag about Greenland after that too. And this is where you have to cut him off. This is where you have to reintroduce some reality to the equation here. Hang on, I'll take a look. Gary the Snail says, yes, if certain people getting power next time, they will just circumvent yes, correct. One thing I'm very disappointed in are the prices. Yes, I'm going to cover that in a second too. Cost of living. Yep, absolutely, Gary. The upcoming Supreme Court ruling on birthright citizenship isn't going to put a dent in illegal immigration because it will not be a retroactive ruling. That's a problem too, Keystone. I actually have not even looked into that too much yet. We are our own worst enemy, says Gary. I'm becoming more of a black pill nihilist, says Tom. Tom, don't become a black pill nihilist. Listen, it's easy nowadays to do that. It's easy to embrace the doomer mindset, take the black pill, embrace nihilism, but there is still hope. And I would point you to people, Tom, if you're conservative, that is. If you're a Democrat, then you're probably not on the right channel. But if you are conservative, socially and or fiscally, I would point you to people like James Fishback running as governor in Florida. Great example of what this country needs. A 31-year-old young guy full of ambition and energy, full of just, well, he's a Catholic, I'm a Protestant, but still I would take that any day. Christian nationalist, loves Florida. He wants to create, he's generating, I've been meaning to make a video about him now that's not a live video on this channel, and I gotta just do it because the name has to spread. James Fishback. You got to look this guy up. Even if you don't live in Florida, look him up. It'll give you hope. We need more people like him. And I advocate for that on this channel all the time. So it's great to see someone like him. We need young men who are Christians, conservatives, etc., to rise up and claim power in this nation. That's how we fix this country. And James Fishback, his policies, you hear that and it's just like, you just can't believe you're hearing a politician speak the way that he is. It's like Trump, but with actual conviction and actual ideology behind it. Because that's Trump's biggest problem. Trump's a populist and a marketing genius and an excellent salesman. And he's infectious and energetic and endearing even. I do love Trump in a lot of ways, which is what hurts even more when he's so disappointing lately. I want to love Trump. He makes it hard in some ways to hate him, but he also makes it hard to love him too, right? And it's because Trump's missing the conviction. He has no ideology. He's not a Christian. He doesn't have a code or a set of moral beliefs to him that actually are going to fix this country. He's purely a populist. And that serves him well. Economic populism wins elections. Populist candidates tend to win more often than not. But the problem with that oftentimes is if there's no conviction, you get what you get with Trump, which is, half of a follow through on campaign promises, not full deliverance on much of anything, constant wishy-washiness, a lot of tactics, but no long-term strategy. And that's been my biggest complaint with Trump. And I think that's become more clear to me when I see candidates like James Fishback and when I see candidates overseas in Britain, in the new Restore Britain party, Rupert Lowe. Again, someone who oftentimes sounds a lot like Trump, but hits closer to home somehow, despite being a British candidate. He hits closer to home to me than my own president. Why? Because Rupert Lowe grew up as a Christian farmer in the farmlands of Britain, connected to the everyday man throughout most of his life. He's older, but he has seen what Britain used to be. And so he speaks from the context of what Britain was supposed to be, what it used to be, and what it should be, rather than just saying stuff that he knows is popular. That's what we have out of Trump. That's Trump's biggest problem. So don't take the black pill. That's my main messaging to you, Tom. There are people rising up, and more people will rise up to save America. I don't believe it's too late yet. We just need a better caliber of politician in this country. Tom says people have been saying things about this stuff for decades too. Yet we all know they ain't going to fix it. I think it's possible to fix it. I just think we have to throw some proper Hail Marys at this point. But the end zone's wide open. It's wide open. We just don't have the right wide receivers or quarterback. Mostly we don't have the right quarterback right now. We just don't. We have somebody who wants to be a quarterback, looks like he'd be a good quarterback. Once in a while, throws a good pass here and there. But truthfully, we don't have the right one yet, and we need more people to rise up, and it's starting to happen. I'm telling you, you just gotta fix your perspective a little bit on it. Don't take that black pill, man. Anyways, when it comes to Greenland, President Trump will brag about Greenland in the same context he brags about Venezuela, and that's where we don't cut him as much slack, and I'll tell you why. Greenland is a country that honestly America needs to take outright. We need. A lot of young guys were excited about invading Greenland. I think that's crazy, somewhat. Though I wouldn't have complained if we did. To be outright honest with you, fuck NATO. But we need to own Greenland, truthfully, for our nation's security in the future. Ownership is the only acceptable outcome when it comes to Greenland. Because NATO's just not trustworthy. This does go back again to what I was talking about earlier. Are our allies currently our allies? And I don't think they are. And I think they're starting to despise us more and more. And we need to reevaluate who our allies truly are in this world. So to make a deal with Denmark, rather than just to tell them outright, we're buying Greenland from you and you're going to sell it to us. Rather, we have Trump making a deal, the art of the deal, which is great sometimes, but not appropriate in every instance. And another one of Trump's major flaws. Power is to be wielded, not negotiated. And Trump is the art of the deal master, a perpetual salesman and businessman. So he views power as too negotiable. It shouldn't be viewed that way. Power is to be wielded. And the way you wield power with Greenland is you go to Denmark and you remind them of the history of Greenland. And you say, hey, your boats arrived on Greenland and you claimed Greenland as yours. And then during the World Wars, you capitulated. You literally folded to Germany in 6 months or less. You have no army. You don't have any ability to fund Greenland properly or defend it. We babysat Greenland for you during the World Wars and returned it to you out of the sheer benevolence of our American hearts. And we now need to own Greenland. It's for our safety. It's for our future safety. And why do we need Greenland? For the Golden Dome project, right? Again, this is something people don't understand. Liberals, when it comes to Trump, they think he's a deranged madman in office, blowing up fishing boats and trying to conquer Greenland and take away the birthright home of 58,000 Greenlandic fishermen, right? It's so much deeper than that in both regards. And when it comes to Greenland, we need the strategical positioning of Greenland as a country for Arctic future warfare and the Arctic purposes. On top of that, it creates a triangular defense when you have Greenland, Alaska, right? And then we have somewhere in Alabama is going to be the other point, and that's going to triangulate the perfect defensive position for us when it comes to defending against, hopefully, what never happens, but possible future missile strikes, long-range missile strikes from Russia and or China in the future. And the Golden Dome operates in a way, just like Israel's Iron Dome, it operates in a way where Israel's Iron Dome does, and Israel's Iron Dome operates in a way where it needs to be able to detect where and when a rocket is being launched from in order to effectively shoot that rocket down. And that's why Greenland's so important. When you look at Greenland from a global spherical map from the top of the Arctic perspective rather than a flat perspective, you can see Greenland is as close to the center of the Arctic as it gets. It pretty much is smack dab in the middle of the Arctic, pretty much at the top of the globe. And so it is central at that point, and it allows us the perfect strategical positioning from a geographical perspective when it comes to Russia. And so we needed to own it. And unfortunately, what Trump did is, once again, folded. He made all of these threats and empty promises about putting soldiers there, increasing soldier occupation there, and buying it for $750 billion, outright owning it. And what does he do? He makes a deal with Denmark and says, all right, fine, you can still own Greenland, but we have to have more sovereignty. So we need to be allowed to expand military bases there without having to ask your permission every time. Denmark says, okay, no problem. So long as we own it, though. They do. And it's just not acceptable because we've seen the history of Denmark over the last 100 years or so. They fold every time. They fold every time in wars and conflict. They don't have any capital going towards any sort of respectable military to defend Greenland. So once again, we're going to be the ones not owning anything, but stuck footing the bill for defense up there without owning it. We've been cucked. We've been cucked. And Trump has been perpetually cucked in a lot of ways in this second administration so far. And so he's going to talk about Greenland in a bragging fashion, but the fact of the matter is he really didn't do a good job with Greenland. We barely got a better deal than the one we originally had with them from the 1950s, where they had already given us permission to put military bases up there. Now the only difference is we don't have to call them first before putting another military base there. Whoop-de-doo. That's semi-sovereignty. We need full sovereignty. Otherwise, it's really not going to be beneficial to us in the future the way we really need it to be. We need to own it. And we need to own it for more than just Golden Dome purposes. Because, yes, now we can build the Golden Dome up there. Oh, that's wonderful. But we also need to own it for the fact that the trading routes via sea routes are going to open up there in the future as more polar ice caps melt. Also, Greenland is full of rare earth minerals. And yeah, the bottom line is when it comes to geopolitics and war for that matter, and a nation thriving, it's all about resources. And this would have been the perfect nonviolent way to acquire a large landmass like Greenland for rare earth minerals, which we need more than ever nowadays. And so we're not going to really get any sort of deals like that, and we're going to have a harder time. We'll be able to influence the sea routes and pretty much control them. But again, the fear is NATO rises up against us. Denmark's a part of it, and we don't own Greenland, and all of a sudden it's on their terms still, and that's really the problem. So I'm not going to buy into his deal with Greenland during the State of the Union address speech tomorrow, but he certainly will be bragging about that. All right, let's see. I just voted my convictions, and I thought there was no way I could vote for Kamala. I agree. Kamala was a train wreck, right? I mean, the Democrats planted her as the candidate, and the cucked Democrats, who are like feminized puss boys, got on their knees, and they said, yes, Democrats, we'll vote for whoever you tell us to. And that's what happened with that. I mean, honestly, there's no way around that one. Kamala was an airhead. She was an idiot. And I felt the same way at the time. Hell yeah, brother, says Joe Schmo. Bootlicker keyboard tough guy, says BJ Thompson. I think it's too weak. I think he's too weak in foreign policy. We are the strongest nation in the world. If Western culture is to survive, we are all that's left. Yeah, I agree, Howard. I agree. I think he's too weak in a lot of ways. And I'm going to cover more of those ways domestically as well in a minute here on this stream. But yeah, he's an older boomer, and he seems to have lost his edge. Dude, the U.S. has bases in Greenland. Yes, I know. Expand them, DJ. Correct. Same goes with Russia. They should make them a great economic deal. Well, he did try, Tom. He offered the Greenlandic people $500,000 each because there's only 58,000 of them. But what Denmark does, what the Danes have been doing in Greenland, is they say, well, really, it's the Greenlanders' position to decide if they want to be under American ownership. They say that publicly, but in true NATO ally fashion, what they do behind closed doors is a different story, right? So typically with NATO allies, they grandstand against America publicly. Behind closed doors, they beg for our money so that they can continue funding their socialist society, which literally wouldn't exist without American funding. Well, with Denmark, what they say publicly is they say, well, it's really the Greenlanders' decision. But what they do privately is they fund anti-American propaganda to hit all of the telephones, cell phones, and televisions with the Greenlandic people there. And so they fund the anti-American commercials for their people in Greenland. And so it sways the public opinion in Greenland with the Greenlanders. And you have, especially the boomers seem to be the most TDS-filled people out there. Canadian boomers, we saw that with for their election. We see it with older Greenlandic people. They're anti-Trump now. So that's part of it too. We are the strongest tribe. We are the strongest nation. We are a hyperpower, Howard. I agree. Let's get on it to protect. I agree. Let's get on it to protect Western culture. We got to save this nation, man. We're going to become the last holdout. Rupert Lowe hopefully wins in Britain because he'll save Western society for Britain too. But He's got an uphill battle going on over there. I'm hopeful, but we could wind up in that position, Howard, where America's the last stand. And that's why we need to focus on the Monroe Doctrine, increase our Western hemispheric influence, increase our power, maybe isolate from the world for a little bit, shut down immigration, restore our country from a domestic standpoint, rebuild our infrastructure, our supply chains. It's going to take years, yes, but why not start now, right? Keep the tariffs in place. We gotta restore our power in this country, and we gotta claim as much of it as possible from a global perspective. We need to fix the economy. I agree, Gary. I'm going to cover that in a second, too, because Trump's going to talk about that tomorrow, no doubt. Trump needs to get his head out of Bibi's ass and actually put America and the American people first, not Israel, says Jonathan Bray, 1223. I'm at a point now where I agree with that, too. And I was the guy. I told you I've made such a transformation from being so politically involved. And it's happened gradually but quickly. And I was the guy on Twitter last year tweeting out stuff like, turn Iran into a parking lot, Like, I was in a different spot. I was just getting re-involved in politics. I'd been out of the loop for so long. I hadn't been paying attention to conspiracy theories for like 12 or 13 years. And my perspective has changed a lot very quickly. The Epstein file release actually helped with that. COVID helped with that a lot. And more importantly, starting this channel up last March and being forced to really pay attention and really research stuff and actually find out what's true and what's fiction has really done it for me, in all honesty. And I'm the kind of guy now, my position on Israel is, I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm not like against Israel as a country, to be honest with you. I know a lot of people are. But what I am pro-semi-isolationism. And I believe that we should follow the Monroe Doctrine and our original founding fathers' instructions to pretty much ignore the old world. What applied then still applies now, maybe lesser so now, but they argued that we were separated by an ocean on either side of us. And that made us more safe then than it does now, certainly, but it actually still kind of has the same effect if we want it to. We have advanced warning of any attack coming our way, especially if we build the Golden Dome and own Greenland, because the Arctic is the shortcut over rather than the Atlantic or Pacific. The Arctic is quicker. That's, again, why we needed to own Greenland. But regardless, the Atlantic and Pacific, it separates us from that side of the world, and it does give us advanced warning of attack. There's no way around it. And so we should be less involved overseas rather than more. But instead, what we find is we find this foreign policy, we find these traitorous senators like Lindsey Graham who live part-time in Ukraine or in Israel, both really, right? And it's like, that's a U.S. senator for a state in America. Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, is it? Or North Carolina? Can't remember which Carolina. But it's like, why is Lindsey Graham in Ukraine or Israel or anywhere else overseas more than he is in his own home state dealing with his own constituents? That's a senator, right? That's not why is that happening? You have to ask yourself that question honestly. Thank you, Keystone. South Carolina. He should be in South Carolina pretty much the entirety of his career as a senator. There's no reason for that guy to be overseas. How does him being in Ukraine help with the people of South Carolina? What does that do for them? Because I was just as mad at that Democrat senator who flew down to El Salvador to visit Kilmar Abrego Garcia, right? Before my eyes were as opened and before I was willing to criticize Republicans as much on this channel, I can't remember that guy's name, but he was like the Maryland senator, that idiot, that old idiot. And he went down there to visit Kilmar Abrego Garcia on American taxpayer dollar dime. And I was critical of him too. And he's a Democrat. So I'm critical of Lindsey Graham too, because it's like you pay attention to this and it's like, these people aren't here to represent us. They're all bought and paid for by foreign dollars. And it's disgusting. Hey, stop everything. Massive, one of the biggest super chats I've gotten on this channel so far from Howard Clegg 6497 with the $5 and not a chat under it. He's just a Chad, and he just decided I'm going to give this guy $5. I appreciate that a lot, man. Thank you so much. I'm really trying to grow this channel and go live more and more on it, so I really appreciate all that support. Thank you so much for that super chat, man. It makes my day. Thank you. W for Howard. I'm an older boomer. Oh, you're a boomer too. See, dude, I'll be honest with you, man. I'm glad I didn't rag on boomers too much this stream. I rag on boomers a lot, but as I rag on them from a generational perspective. And this is what I say in regards to that. You look back on what boomer policy has done, especially the boomer politicians who had control, and you understand, and you understand how much they really screwed up America. And I compare it to Zohran Mamdani being voted into New York City mayor, right? Like, I don't live there, but I'm a millennial. And the bottom line is, when I'm older, I'm going to hear about how millennials are the problem and the reason why Zohran Mamdani was voted in. And I'm going to have to say, well, listen, I never even lived there. I didn't vote for Zohran Mamdani. I couldn't have. And they're going to say, well, but, millennials did. That's what your generation did. They voted in Zohran Mamdani, and he hiked up the property taxes in New York for everyone. And I'm like, I didn't live there. I didn't vote for him. It's not going to matter. Generational responsibility. And so I rag on boomers a lot, man. But there are plenty of cool boomers out there. And I'm not just saying that because you gave $5. I'm saying that because I genuinely know a lot of boomers that are conservative and boomers that are actually aware of just how rough America is right now, and they actually care about the younger generations. And my plan is to age as a millennial, why I glaze Gen Z so much and always praise them and say Gen Z guys are awesome. I love them. They're based. They're on point. It's because I don't want to continue the generational warfare in the sense of talking down on the younger generations. And so I think we just need to observe history, see what went wrong, look at past policies from the boomers and say, hey, they fucked up big time here and here and here, and they sold us out to China, blah, 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 blah. And not always were boomers. Sometimes it was the older generations before boomers did that too, right? Reagan and George H. Herbert, George Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton, I don't even know if you can count them as boomers. They were a little bit older. So, but regardless, just to make that very clear, if you ever hear me hating on boomers, it's not hating on people like you, Howard Clegg. What were you saying, though? You said I'm an older boomer. I love young cats like you. It's on guys. It is on us, and we're gonna save this country, man. I believe in this country. I've taught my grandboys, and they are with you. Good, thank you, man. See that, and that's why I say there are cool boomers, because there genuinely are. Every generation has a unique set of circumstances, struggles, and benefits that they're blessed with and cursed with. And the boomers got to take advantage of a lot of stuff that makes the young generations jealous, and rightfully so. And but there's cool boomers out there like you. Honestly, you've raised the young cat, you've raised your grandboys. You've done well. You've done well, because it is on us now, and there's a lot of problems we're realistically inheriting from the older generations, and we're gonna have to fix it. And I believe we can fix it. I look at a candidate like James Fishback, like I said earlier in the stream, running for governor in Florida. 31-year-old guy, sharp, smart, just says all the right stuff. And I listen to him talk and I go, please, we need more people like this running for office. We really do. So thank you, Howard. I really appreciate it. Geographic differences are not as important now. Economically, we are interconnected with the world. I understand what you're saying, yeah, and maybe with digital currency, that notion will actually be enhanced and even trickier to navigate. So, but I'm talking purely from a military standpoint. I'm talking purely just from the standpoint of we're isolated from that world. We not in trade or economic wise, but from a military standpoint. What I'm discussing when it comes to this foreign policy stuff, I'm discussing literally this Ukraine-Russia war, where we continually are sending our money, which is it's not the American government's money. Anytime the American government generates revenue, it's coming from us, right? And Trump was unique in this fact, where he brought back all of these tariffs, which we'll discuss at length in a little bit here. And for the first time in a long time, some of that revenue has actually been from exporters and foreign companies, which I love. But the bulk of the government's money is not generated from anywhere else other than we, the people. And so when you see that money being sent to Ukraine, for instance, or Israel even, or NATO, where we're footing the bill for NATO's defense so that they can maintain their prissy and prim socialist society that they then flaunt in our face and brag about to us and use it to put us down and say, your healthcare is not free. What the fuck are you guys doing over there? And it's like they're living in a fantasy land because of our American dollars. And I look at all of that and I go, this is bullshit. There's so much wrong with America. Our money needs to stay here. We need to fix our country. Why are we sending all this money overseas for countries that don't even like us? And they only pretend to like us on occasion when they need our money. And so that's the context in which I'm discussing foreign policy and the Monroe Doctrine. We're separated by two oceans from that side of the world. And when it comes to these wars, they're not our problem. These wars are not our problem, And I'm not, if Iran's developing nuclear power, I view that as a net negative to the world. I really do. At the end of the day, I still am like 25% in favor of the bombing of Iran last year on the off chance that we eliminated their nuclear facilities, which of course now we're being told we didn't anyway. But like, I'm not going to completely hate on that idea. I'm going to say, well, hey, I don't want Iran having nukes. Agreed, right? Like, I'm not like a super pro, Middle East guy. I think Iran having nukes would be a disaster. But the bottom line also is, if it's that much of a disaster, how about NATO, our allies that are like their backyard is Iran pretty much? How about NATO and Israel? How about those two countries team up together and they can deal with Iran then? And we can say, hey, if your guys get hurt, we'll send some medical aid. I'm okay with a little bit of aid going there, help the soldiers, in the war that NATO and Israel wages against Iran, help the soldiers out a little bit. That's okay. I'm not like a cold-hearted, calloused human being. But we should be sending infinitely less money than what we do to those countries, and they should be standing on their own 2 feet now. If Iran's a threat, so be it. NATO and Israel can deal with it. Time for those countries to stand on their own. Need I remind you, NATO is, I don't think it's 30, it used to be 32 or 33 countries. I think it's 27 or 28. Regardless, NATO is a conglomerate of countries. We're talking about a lot, and a lot of them are small and will never have prominent militaries, yes. But we're talking about countries in NATO like Germany, I think Italy, right? France. These are actually big countries. They should have militaries. The UK can join in. I know they did Brexit, but the UK can join in as well. And it can be the UK, NATO, and Israel. And they can say, this has to stop with Iran. We'll take care of this one, America. Please just send us a little bit of aid if we need it. But don't bother with your military. Don't bother sending your American soldiers over, America. We've got this. Why is it always America that has to send the soldiers and spill the blood for the rest of the world while we give the rest of the world money, while we give our allies money who refuse to send or at least even equate in an equivalent way, send the same amount of military support? Why is it always us doing that? That's my stance on that. I get it. You have the sword now. So yeah, exactly, Howard. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Appreciate you, Howard, so much. Geographic differences. Oh yeah, I read that one. I'm a Zoomer who voted for Trump, but he kind of sucks, says Hungry Garfield. See, I'm glad you're in here, Hungry Garfield. By the way, guys, please be sure to double tap the stream right now if you haven't already to like the stream. It really helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. And subscribe to American Advocates if you haven't already. Hungry Garfield, I'm glad you're in here, man, because honestly, that is the sentiment that a lot of these older guys or a lot of these toe the line Republicans need to hear. And I don't know if anybody of this sort is in this chat right now or anybody will watch this in the future, but I try to tell people this all the time. These Republicans who insist you got to toe the party line. Republicans must win midterms. Republicans are going to dominate in the midterms. And I try to inform them and I try to let them know in my own personal life at my gym, I talk with Zoomers. And Zoomer men are very socially conservative. Not always fiscally conservative, by the way, but they're very socially conservative. And that's only continuing to trend more to the right for them. And rightfully so. Our society is mad fucked up. But the Zoomers all say the same thing to me. And they say what you're saying. They say, you know what? I thought Trump was going to be our guy, but he's kind of a cuck. He kind of sucks. He did a few good things at first, but like he's not doing anything that I want anymore, you know? And on the worst case scenario, I've even heard some of the Zoomers say, you know what? I hope Trump gets impeached. I want him out because he's not living up to his promises and he's failed us. And I think a lot of older Republicans would be surprised at that narrative. And they don't really believe me when I tell them that that's what's going on. But it is happening. And that's why it's so important this administration succeed. And I still pray for this administration daily. And I still want this administration to turn it around. And I still believe this administration can turn it around. A lot of the solutions to this administration turning around are simple, but Trump is seemingly refusing to do it. And that's the problem. And so, yeah, Trump's very likely not going to be our guy. He still could be, but in some ways he's done permanent damage, like with the Epstein files. And then in the things where he could turn it around, there seems to be no effort to do so. In fact, quite the opposite in a lot of cases. He seems to be doubling down on the bad stuff. Zohran Mamdani has dual citizenship from Uganda. I've not heard that yet. That is crazy. We need to end dual citizenship in this country for anybody running for office. That needs to change. And probably even for anybody applying for citizenship in this country to begin with. Do you believe in these spheres of influence? I'm not sure what that is, to be honest with you, JB. Jonathan says exactly. Hey, 2009 Lifeguards here. Welcome to the chat, 2009 Lifeguard. He says, I don't get a tax refund. Well, you own a business like I do, so hey, trust me, I understand. I write yeah. I don't. Hey, you're a much more successful businessman than I am, clearly, because I don't write a 5-digit check. That's correct. That's wild. But that's good, man. That means you make it. That's good and bad. You shouldn't have to be writing that, but that tells me you're a very successful guy, businessman wise. So kudos to you. But at the same time, I feel the frustration too. Trust me. You write a 5-digit check every year, and it's not a check but a bank draft. And I hate seeing where it goes. Yeah, I know. I have my accountant do it because if I did it, I'd probably get sick. Yeah, I know. I know. I understand exactly what you're saying, Lifeguard. Yeah, Gary the Snail gets you. Brexit backfired. Did it? Only because of the politicians that are currently in office over there in Britain, I'd say, right? Like they have all the wrong people running for office in the UK right now. I want to see what happens to the UK if Rupert Lowe and the Restore Britain party there can take power, because I believe in that guy over there. And I hope we get candidates like him here in America. You know, when Trump first won the presidency, November 2024, you saw this theme across the world. You saw a lot of these other countries playfully saying this: make Italy great again. We need to, make Canada great again, the conservative Canadians. Make Britain great again. Like, they were all jumping on board with it. They loved the idea of it. And they were all saying, you're lucky to have Trump. We wish we had somebody like Trump here. And I agreed with that notion at the time. Now, fast forward, like I said, and you realize Trump doesn't have ideology or conviction. He only has populist notions. And that's his biggest weakness, and why there's no follow through on his campaign promises, why he always appears to chicken out. Now I look at people with conviction like Rupert Lowe in the Restore Britain party overseas, and I go, gee, I hope we get a candidate like him here in America, Chinese war tech has been changing, especially with the Ukraine war. Yeah, I've seen the drone use. Trust me, I'm not a fan, Tom. I hate it. Drones are deeply disturbing to my soul, especially from a war use perspective. I wouldn't go that far, says Hungry Garfield. What do you mean, how far? As far as Rupert Lowe? Calling people cucks while being cucked by this administration. This administration's full of cucks. You can get the heat from me, Phil Day, and this administration can get the heat from me. Make Argentina great again. Hey, hopefully. Hopefully. You look like Rosie O'Donnell. Thank you. Wow. She was like the top model of her day. I believe the Brits are getting to their ends. Yeah, they are. They're on the verge of a revolution in Britain. He doesn't appear to chicken out. He just chickens out. He does just chicken out sometimes. Yeah, he does appear to chicken out other times. There are times where people have overplayed the taco references. Some things are, I've discussed this before, like I said, power is not supposed to be negotiated. It's supposed to be wielded. And the art of the deal is great for business and negotiations, but not for wielding power. And so that's why Trump chickens out, is because he views everything as a negotiation when he shouldn't. But some things he's negotiated on and unfairly been accused of chickening out on, like tariffs. Tariffs were always going to be a negotiation, so I thought it was rather unfair he was being called a taco when he would lower the tariff rate on certain countries. It's like, listen, you don't understand his tactics. It comes down to a twofold issue. Half the time they're right, he chickens out. The other half the time, they're just people are business illiterate, they're negotiation illiterate, they have no sales ability, they don't understand social dynamics, negotiation, and so they say, oh, he lowered his tariffs on China from 140% to 54%. Taco Trump's like, you're a fucking idiot, okay? We were never going to keep the tariffs that high on China. He always blew them out of proportion at first on purpose to make the statement, to rattle the cages, and then inside of the chaos, the art of the deal, get the actual deal that he wanted. So I think it was unfair sometimes. That's why I say he appears to, because not always has he. But he has certainly chickened out sometimes. I halfway agree with you. Trump likes to compare himself to past presidents. I know I've said this before, Howard. Andrew Jackson ignored the Supreme Court. I've made that point. It is time for Trump to be Andrew Jackson. Otherwise, maybe you'll understand this reference. Otherwise, he's going to wind up being more closely associated with Buchanan. The monarchy of the United Kingdom is on borrowed time. Yeah, it might be. Okay. Let me get back on point here, guys. It was fun reading a lot of your chats here. But please, by the way, if you haven't already, be sure to double tap your screen to like the stream, because it really helps the stream perform better in the algorithm. I also wanted to cover a few things here on the topic of tariffs. I was just talking about tariffs, right? Um, he's going to mention those, no doubt, in the State of the Union tomorrow. You're going to hear, it's my favorite word in the dictionary, tariffs. And then the liberals say, well, what about God? What about family? What about children? What about church? And he goes, okay, fine. So it's my fifth favorite word. I still love the word tariffs. Beautiful word. And they are. And I've been pro tariff on this channel from the start. My first video, long form video that I posted on this channel was how Trump will usher in the golden age of America using tariffs. Now, unfortunately, I was only halfway right. We haven't gotten that golden age, but it's not the tariffs' fault. The tariffs are actually setting us up in the long run for a better economic time here in this country because we need the tariffs in place to protect our local domestic businesses, manufacturing. We need to be trying to bring back manufacturers and production into this country. We need to be rebuilding our supply chains because we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet from an economic standpoint, and we need to be developing as much of our own stuff as possible. We should have never gotten away from that. And we were sold out by Congress decades ago to China, Vietnam, etc. We need that to come back as much as possible. Tariffs are the way to do that. And the way Trump implemented the tariffs was faulty. He did so kind of incorrectly, but mostly good. And at the very least, they're there. They're in the conversation now, and they should not go anywhere. And so he's going to discuss the tariffs tomorrow. I'm in favor of them overall. It's a good thing that he's done, and that's one of the ones he'll mention tomorrow where I will not criticize him. I am in support of the tariffs. Yeah, well, exactly, Hungary. Yeah, they're not going to be short-term economic stimulus. They're going to be quite the opposite, actually. And I did predict that on this channel. I said it's going to lower our dollar. I predicted it will lower our dollar value. The stock market will become unpredictable. But I also predicted they're de facto deflationary, which is actually a hidden benefit to tariffs. And I've made that prediction on this channel last year. Early on, I said it's not going to cause our inflation to go up and stay high, or crash upwards. I said from the start it would actually cause our inflation to cool more. And I've been right. I've been proven right. Inflation actually dropped to 2.4%, and it relatively stayed cool at 2.7% for the majority of last year. But yeah, they are short-term pain, and we've seen that short-term pain from the tariffs in the form of our coffee. Coffee prices have gone up, of course, Colombian coffee. Our beef prices have gone up. That's very noticeable. And so they were never going to be pleasant, which is why all past administrations have recognized the need for our foreign policy when it comes to trade, our trade policy, to change. Obama's admitted this. All the Democrats have admitted this. In fact, in the 90s, it was the Democrats grandstanding against the Republicans and telling them they were making the mistake of doing what they were doing. They were the ones advocating for the change that Trump is trying to bring about right now. But the problem is no administration has had the balls to do it, knowing, for what the reason you said, a short-term economic stimulus not happening, knowing that it would cause short-term pain, knowing that it would cause some prices on some things to go up, which is what's happened. And so it's a self-sacrificing play, in all honesty, on Trump's part, which is why I actually respect him for it. That's one of those things. It's like there's a few things, as critical as I've been of this Trump administration on this channel as a whole, there are a few things I will defend him on religiously. Tariffs are one of them. The border and the border security at the wall is another one because he has genuinely done a good job of that. And I'll defend him on anything that he speaks from an expansionist perspective. Owning Greenland, which he failed to achieve, and why I'm critical of him for that reason. But the initial idea, he comes up with these good ideas and the follow through sucks. The initial idea is owning Greenland. Yes, big yes. Venezuela, huge fan, right? The Monroe Doctrine, massive fan. Thank you. Yes, Monroe Doctrine, though he's not following it, right? So there are a few things I defend him on, and tariffs are one of them. Where was I here? I don't script my stuff, but I take like loose notes so I can remember what I wanted to talk about. Tariffs. Yes, the other one. I want to talk about this too. Actually, I'll take a look at some more chats, make sure I'm not missing anything. Gas is going up more. Yeah, gas has been disappointing, right? Not that gas is all that important, to be honest with you. It only really equates for like 2 to 4% of the average American's yearly expenses. But, gas is really kind of, it dropped down a lot at first, but it really hasn't continued to drop like I'd like it to. After 1 year, did any of those said industry return yet? I've covered this, Mezukage 27. I've covered this in the dilemma. that presidents face when they attempt to restore domestic manufacturing in this country. I'll briefly cover it again right now. I'll say this. The dilemma is these companies and these countries, they take advantage of our presidential term limits. And they do that by essentially promising to redevelop manufacturing domestically, to reshore their manufacturing plants in America over a course of time that outlasts the presidential term. And so what you'll see a lot of times in these deals to reshore from these various presidents is a 5-year deal. And what you'll see is the first 3 to 4 years, the development of those new manufacturing and factories and manufacturing plants being built is extremely slow, to the point where you see like a handful of construction workers on site slowly putting up steel beams and stuff and barely getting any work done. Then the president gets voted out or his term ends, and the company, if they pay attention to our elections, if the opposite party gets voted in that won't enforce that deal that was made, they say, you know what, never mind. We actually have decided we're not going to follow through on that deal. We're actually moving our manufacturing plant back to Vietnam or China. We decided, no, we don't want to be here. And then that's what happens. And so that is a big problem. Trump has tried to mitigate that issue in a lot of these reshoring deals. You see the terms are 4 years instead of 5, and in some cases even less than that. Hyundai Steel, Honda, Stargate, Stellantis, and several others have made pledges to come back and pledge dollar amounts in the hundreds of millions in a lot of cases to do so. And we've seen construction and developments, and we've seen some of them actually make a pretty good effort to do so. But it's not all across the board. Some of them are certainly taking advantage, and some of our manufacturing, some of our factories have actually closed too. So it's a mixed bag in all honesty. It's very, very hard to enforce it, is the reality of it. What's your take on the self-deportation numbers? I actually covered that earlier, Hungary, but I think that they're being I think they're being inflated. I think they're being inflated, and the bottom line with self-deportation numbers, honestly, is this. Even if that number's accurate, let's grant it for the sake of the argument that they're right. Like the self-deportation number, let's say it's 1.5 million. Extremely high, probably inflated, overly inflated by this administration, right? But let's pretend it's real. The problem is that number will not be, it's not going to maintain, it's not going to steadily be that number yearly. It's going to taper off drastically, because what happened was Trump got voted into office, and the fear, I said this before, not the economic fear index, but the fear index centered around Trump being in office again and coming for blood, seeking retribution against the deep state, right? We saw Washington, D.C. Google searches spiked at an 80% increase of people searching for criminal defense attorneys. They thought for sure this Trump DOJ was going to come with fangs, and they were going to come and they were coming for scalps, and they were going to prosecute the deep state. So we saw that. We saw the illegal immigrants panicking. So we saw the self-deportations. So I believe the number is pretty decent, but I believe they're overly inflated. Granted, though, let's say 2 million of them self-deported. Let's just go crazy with it. It won't be like that this year. That number's going to taper off for a few different reasons. The amount of good-natured illegal immigrants in this country who aren't so desperate that they'll hide in a shack or in the woods and work a $3 an hour farm job just to live in America, that number of good-natured people who are willing to turn themselves in to be self-deported and then gainfully reapply for citizenship correctly was only going to be a finite amount to begin with. So this year, I wouldn't expect that number to be anywhere close to what they're saying that it was, even if they're correct in the number that they're saying that it was. And that's my stance on it. So it really doesn't even matter in the long run, is basically the point. But, I wouldn't be surprised if it was well under 1 million. I think they're probably blowing that number out of proportion, truthfully. Gas has been pretty low in my area. Yeah, I mean, gas got good in my area, but it's not as good as I'd like it, just to be honest with you. AI is changing industry, man. It is. That's true. That is true. Yeah, I talk about the need to regulate domestic AI all the time on this channel. Biden was better on industrial policy, I think. Oh, it's a tough one. That's a tough one. Like the CHIPS Act wasn't all that bad, I guess, right? That's a tough one. $2.79 last week to $3.05 a gallon this week in PA. Jeez. Well, PA, what is PA? Technically a red state, right? But PA's got issues, a lot of Democrat influence there. Keystone, you gotta go to a deep red conservative state, man. Life's just better, right? Anyways, back on point. Here's what I wanted to discuss as well. Swig some water. What won't we see Trump talk too much about in the State of the Union address tomorrow? The Epstein files. I think he's going to have a cleverly worded narrative crafted for him to say in the State of the Union address tomorrow regarding Epstein. He'll no doubt take credit for its actual release, right? It's a topic that he can't avoid at this point, but it's one that he'll do his best to not go too in depth on. It's a bad mark on this administration. And the fact of the matter is, yes, these files are only released because of this administration. There's no way to frame it otherwise. We went the entirety, yes, and I'm rolling my eyes because I know Trump's going to say it, but we went the entirety of the Biden administration without the files even being mentioned all that much. Only subcommittees during the Biden administration were talking about it, and those subcommittees were being suppressed. They didn't want you to hear what they were talking about. They didn't want it to be national news, and this Biden administration didn't want to release them. They would have released them if Trump was incriminated in them, of course, but I think it's very obvious at this point, if you actually look into the files like I have, that Trump's not going to be criminally implicated in anything. His name's in it a lot, yes, but only from a networking standpoint, only from the fact that he's a powerful figurehead and Epstein was obsessed with people like Trump. And so that's what we're going to hear. We're going to hear Trump say, oh, well, Biden could have done it. He didn't. I did it. I got it done. Only because of me are the Epstein files out. And it's like, yes, that's true. But the bottom line also is this administration has been complicit in attempting to cover up the Epstein files every step of the way. I mean, we've seen so much of a story with these Epstein files so far. We've seen everything go wrong with this. We've seen this administration say, yeah, I'll look into it. Yeah, we're going to release them actually. Pam Bondi, yeah, they're on my desk, Pam Bondi. Yes, I'm looking at them now. It's sick and disturbing. Yes, you'll see. Oh, never mind, they're not there anymore. Oh, actually, there's no more investigation in these files. We're closing all investigations via a midnight order on a late summer July night, I remember. Pam Bondi, midnight. Oh, investigation is closed. No need to investigate. No prosecution's coming. Then all of a sudden, an act of Congress, Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, bipartisan fashion teaming up, Marjorie Taylor Greene at the time coming in and saying, you know what, these files need to be made transparent. You promised transparency. These files are disturbing. They've seen some of the stuff in it at the time. They need to be made public. So it took an act of Congress where everybody except one voted in favor of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which then forced it obviously to the president's desk and put Trump in the spotlight to the point where there's no way he could have vetoed it or signed. He had to sign it at that point. And so the reason why we're getting it is because of this Trump administration and because they said they would release it, but then they ultimately tried to go back on their word. They tried to not release it every step of the way, and only when they were absolutely forced to did they. And beyond that, the release itself has been a disaster. We've seen fully redacted pages. We've seen co-conspirators' names and perpetrators' names redacted. We've seen victims' names left unredacted. This DOJ has not heard or interviewed any of the Epstein victims who have self-identified themselves for such purposes. Pam Bondi has embarrassed herself when she had to testify on a lot of this stuff, referencing the Dow Jones and how we should all just focus on the stock market instead of Epstein and a criminal pedophile ring. All the information in the Epstein files that has radicalized me when it comes to intelligence agencies and our allies, right? MI6 in Britain, Mossad in Israel, the CIA, our own CIA, right? Things that I kind of already deep down knew, especially the CIA and somewhat Mossad, but I've been more enlightened on. All of this stuff being swept under the rug by this administration. And so it's a disaster, these Epstein files. And there's no going back now. What's done is done. It's a permanent black mark on Trump and perhaps one of the worst political decisions he's made in any of his terms. And so he's going to try to gloss over that. He'll take credit for it. He'll blame Biden for not releasing it. And then he'll say, I signed it into effect. And that'll be the end of it. I don't feel like he's going to go too in depth at all because I don't expect this administration and this Trump Department of Justice to pursue justice against any of the co-conspirators or perpetrators listed in the files. Trump himself has said he thinks it's a tragedy that a lot of these names have been made public. He's now going out of his way to defend Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, testify Hillary tomorrow and Bill in 2 days or in 3 days, right? And so he's going to have to mention them, I think, but he'll do so loosely. Take a look at some chats. Gonna try and pick up the pace here, though. I got a lot more notes, topics I want to cover. YouTube compliance. Trump says Trump will gaslight for 2 hours, trying to tell us that everything is great. Yes, he will. Some of the things he'll say, I've already gone over. I'll agree with him on, but most of the stuff he'll say, I think I'm going to be rolling my eyes, to be honest with you, at this point. You think Trump should bail out the crypto brothers? I actually don't know who you're talking about. I'm not sure who the crypto brothers are. Keystone Liberty says MTG was right all along. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I have a hard time respecting Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think sometimes she is kooky. And I also hate the fact that she just quit. But so I can't really respect her all that much, but she wasn't completely wrong. JE had to be more than just an investor. I think there's way more to what he was there for. I mean, it's like putting all the eggs in one basket. It just doesn't make sense, says Tom. Yeah, I mean, when you look at like the people like Leon Black, these powerful billionaires, the history is like, and I've covered this at length on this channel. These powerful billionaires meet Jeffrey, and just like within like relatively short timelines, like Les Wexner, within 5 years, decided to give Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his companies and businesses. Of course, those businesses were limited, and Victoria's Secret was included in that bundle, the Wexner Foundation, right? Within 5 years, he says, you know what? This guy I met only a few years ago, he's my power of attorney now. He has complete control over the hiring and firing of workers for my companies. He has complete control to move any amount of money that he so chooses to and from anywhere he pleases. Leon Black literally says, you know, Jeffrey Epstein, he's this mysterious guy. He's intriguing. You know, he just understands money, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm going to, you know, Leon Black just like donated hundreds of millions, gave him tons of money. It's like, you have to ask yourself those questions. And the bottom line, truthfully, is it's because Epstein was a Mossad agent or, you know, some sort of Israeli intelligence agent for sure. He also was probably a dual agent. I think he worked for CIA, and I think he probably worked for MI6 and possibly had the KGB ties, or was at least working with them. So, yeah, that really explains it. I think the Epstein files point to that pretty conclusively, in my opinion, though. The Clarity Act to make Bitcoin and cryptocurrency holders richer. Yeah, I'm familiar with the Clarity Act. I actually was somewhat of a fan of Trump signing the Genius Act when he did so as well. When have you ever seen a paper come out of Washington that wasn't redacted? Says Ben. You know, yeah, isn't that a tragedy? You're onto something with that question, though, aren't you? True. This host is an idiot. Thank you, just me. Hell, I was in 4th grade when JFK was killed. I'll never know what happened, and kids my age will still, yeah, they'll be asking. Yes, they probably will. Yeah. Yep. Just me, the host is a genius. Listen, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate that. You're just a fool, just me. Appreciate you, Howard. All right. So I have in my notes next, I pose this question, right? Because I've covered now what we're going to hear from him during the State of the Union address speech tomorrow. Here's the question I posed, and I've kind of listed out in bullet points on my notepad here the answers in a way. I said, so what have we actually gotten out of this administration? And I listed a lot of negative stuff because that's where my mind's at right now. It's hard to ignore. I actually started with Doge. I said Doge, I put here, Doge was canceled within a few short months with not nearly enough waste, fraud, and corruption exposed and eliminated. Elon Musk was outed from his position in the government with a black eye. Literally a black eye, right? The rumor is he got that black eye from Scott Bessent, who had a vicious disagreement with Elon Musk. And I think Elon Musk's presence was making a lot of conservatives feel a little uncomfortable too, because by no means are conservative politicians exonerated from some of the same problems and some of the same issues Democrats have, some of the same problems I have with Democrats. That corruption, it's twofold. It's not just Democrats. There are definitely corrupt Republicans in office right now. And so I think Elon Musk and Doge, though it was an excellent idea, it was set up to fail. I don't think the intent was for it to ever succeed fully, and I think it was sabotaged deliberately, pretty much by this administration. You know, the bottom line is there's plenty of waste, fraud, and corruption in our government, and I think Doge was uncovering that and making it very clear to us. And I think even Democrats would admit getting rid of waste, fraud, and corruption is a good thing. Democrats at the time were, of course, radicalized against Doge with a lot of vicious Democrat propaganda via Jasmine Crockett and a bunch of, double-digit IQ morons. But most Americans, if you ask them outright without the context of Doge overlooming it, should the government get rid of waste, fraud, and corruption? I think most Americans would say yes, absolutely. And so I think Doge was a great thing, and I think that was really the beginning of Trump's downfall in his administration. A lot of numbers I remember at the time were coming in via polls, especially via Rasmussen, that pointed to the fact that Doge was actually one of the most popular policies and one of the most popular ideas Trump had in correlation with Elon Musk when it came to the youth. Young people loved Trump and Elon as a duo. They loved the idea of a Fort Knox audit, right? When did that happen? It didn't. We didn't get the Fort Knox audit. When Trump and Elon were in the same room with each other at the time, they humorously brought up the idea in a semi-serious fashion of live streaming it, going to Fort Knox with live cameras connected to the internet, streaming on YouTube, and just opening the vault. Where's the gold? Is it there? Is it not there? We'll never know. Why? Because maybe the gold's not there. And maybe that's just part of the problem when it came to Doge and when it came to just the exposure. These politicians, they say two wings on the same bird. They had to come together, no doubt, I think, when it came to Doge and say, listen, you can't do this. It's going to destroy our system. By the way, of course, it'll destroy our system. The same very words we heard from Speaker Mike Johnson in regards to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And so this administration has had two faces. This face that puts out these great ideas of things people want that are popular, and then this face that actually later on goes, oh shit, wait, actually we cannot do that. It'll destroy our systems. And that's really what we've seen all year long with Trump. Doge is an example. Releasing the Epstein Files is another example. Two examples that would actually destroy our systems for the better, right? Like the term destroy the system, it can almost sound scary and intense and bad. It would be wonderful if that happened overall, especially in a nonviolent way, right? Like typically it takes revolutions to do that. This administration is sitting on the chance to avoid a very possible violent revolution in this country, which I do not advocate for, and I do not want to happen. Especially from a geopolitical standpoint right now, everything going on across the world right now, we do not want a revolution in our own country right now because it'll weaken us when it comes to all these other superpowers that are vying for our position globally, right? And this administration has the chance to implement stuff like Doge that will destroy the system in the right way, expose the waste, fraud, and corruption. It could then use the DOJ to prosecute and imprison those who are found guilty in the waste, fraud, and corruption. It had the chance to release the Epstein files and then use the DOJ to go after the co-conspirators and perpetrators who are literally involved, very likely, in the selling of national security secrets to CIA, Mossad, KGB, MI6 via Epstein, who are involved with the scandal of Epstein Island, right? And it would destroy the system, prosecute all of the politicians who we investigate at first and ideally would find proof, solid concrete proof that they were involved in treasonous, traitorous ways with Jeffrey Epstein, prosecute, imprison, possibly give them capital punishment in all honesty. This administration has all the chances to do this and has failed with both of them. And now, as a result, Americans are getting more and more outraged. And when Trump got rid of Doge, when Elon Musk was ousted from his position with a black eye and got into an intense argument with Trump online, we saw Trump's popularity with the youth just continually decline very quickly because the youth focus on the system. And we're aware that the system works against us nowadays. It doesn't like Americans. It works against us, and it's corrupt, and it only serves to fill the pockets of the politicians who continually get rich on our despair. And so that's what's so disappointing, and that's what we've gotten. We've just gotten a bunch of good ideas with no real implementation, and ultimately failure. It's a failure. So, the golden age that we were promised, I wrote down. The golden age is only golden for boomers and corporations right now. Longtime 401k holders are loving life, right? And so that's where this generational divide happens. I hear a lot of conservative boomers. I get them in my chat. I get them in the comments on my videos on my channel. I get them in person telling me that I'm dividing the party. I'm sowing in division in the Republican Party. Republicans are going to lose midterms because of people like me, according to them. Well, the problem is the boomers are the last remaining people that are going to receive entitlements like Social Security and Medicare. So they're receiving those right now. They're living off the entitlements. They have their 401k that they've had in the stock market for decades now. The stock's been doing overall very well. Of course, the Dow Jones is down humorously after Pam Bondi told us we should all focus on that instead of Epstein. It's gone down a bit, but it hit record highs. The Nasdaq, the S&P 500, record highs, a lot of it. So the stock market's doing great. 401ks are wrapped up in the stock market. Boomers have capitalized off of that. They've insulated themselves from an economic standpoint. A lot of boomers have built wealth because they've been alive for so long. They bought their home for 18 grand in 1983. That home's now worth 571,000. They pull out the equity of it. Now they're worth $500,000. They buy a second vacation home or winter home in Florida, Arizona, Texas, right? And so, good for them. But, that's the generational divide that we're seeing now. There's a golden age, according to a lot of boomer conservatives that I've talked to in my personal life or here in the chat sometimes. It's not a golden age for young people, right? It's crony capitalism right now, in all honesty. Crony capitalism is thriving right now. Trump has gone on record saying he wants housing prices to go up. He wants the housing prices to go up. Millennials and Gen Zers can't own homes. We can't even afford that, right? Like millennials might get lucky enough to own a home eventually in their 40s. Gen Zers are looking at the market and they're looking at it and they're thinking, well, if millennials are struggling to own homes right now when they should be at prime home buying age, what will happen with me? The answer is, unfortunately, if we continue on this trajectory, Gen Zers will be renters for the rest of their lives. And a lot of millennials will find themselves in that category too. Millennials are currently behind in their mid-30s right now, most millennials. I'm the youngest end of the millennial spectrum. I'm actually very close to the Gen Z line. Gen Z, I think, is 97. So I'm closer to Gen Z than I am to the oldest millennial. I'm looking at the stats when it comes to millennial home ownership at age 36. Boomers were outpacing millennials. Boomers at age 36 outpaced where millennials are at from home ownership at the same age by a lot, by a significant percentage. And the average median home buyer age right now is age 59 years old. That's up from 20 years ago, where the average age median home buyer was age 39. And it tells you basically the same people buying homes 20 years ago are the same people buying homes now. And it's not millennials. It's actually Gen Xers, and then, boomers. And boomers and Xers are buying and selling homes to each other because they're the only ones currently sitting with enough money to be able to do so. Millennials are struggling to own their first home. And like I said, Gen Z, it's not looking good for them. And so this golden age, this is what Trump's going to talk about a lot during his State of the Union address speech. And I think it's going to be a mistake for him to say we're in a golden age. I think that that's going to upset more people than it makes happy. I'll take a look at some more chats. I know they're coming in. By the way, guys, please, like I said before, if you haven't already, double tap your screen if you're watching on your phone, or just find the three bars at the top corner here, tap it and click like. It really helps the stream perform well in the algorithm if you do. And subscribe to American Advocates if you haven't already. Make sure post notifications are turned on when you do so you're notified every time I go live, which is semi-daily. National debt is higher. Yep, we're still spending. We're still spending, and that's not going to change with this administration. My taxes went down. My utilities went down. Gas went down from $2 to $4. For prices came down, not as far as Trump's first term, but better than 2 years ago. My Social Security went up. I'm good, says Bucky Ann Creations. Hey, I recognize you, Bucky Ann Creations. You've been in my chat before. Welcome back. I'm happy to have your perspective in here, but you kind of prove my point, don't you? Because you're talking about Social Security. So, as a young millennial, and for any Gen Zers listening, or any millennials for that matter, a lot of what you're saying doesn't apply, and I'll tell you why. First of all, if you live in a very good conservative state, no doubt life's gotten better for everybody to some degree, because conservative states, you do notice the prices, there's a difference in gas and everything else. But the bottom line is real wage growth is not keeping up with inflation. And so essentially, young people are slowly drowning over time when it comes to competitive pay. On top of that, young people are having a harder time than ever finding jobs that pay good, because a lot of the problems stem from immigration and AI work collectively coming together to replace us. In regards to gas, gas has gone down nationwide overall, but it depends on what state you're in. Some people are still paying quite a bit for gas, like Keystone Liberty in my chat, for instance, where his gas just went up recently. He lives in kind of a swing state, Pennsylvania, right? So prices came down. Now, where I'm at, for instance, prices have not come down. I'm not going to say where I'm at, obviously, but there a lot of my cost of living prices, a lot of consumer goods where I'm at have gone up in price recently. Actually very noticeably over the past month, for instance. Overall, across the board, cost of living with a lot of the products I've researched, on average, up like 2.4%. Orange juice went up 28% year over year. Beef's gone up because of tariffs. Coffee went up. Chicken is up. Bacon is up. Right. So a lot of these prices either haven't come down, or in some cases, in a lot of cases recently, they are going up. And that's just perhaps somewhat anecdotal, but I'm using my eyes. I go grocery shopping every other day because I like to buy fresh ingredients. So I see the prices a lot. I pay attention to them a lot. And I'm telling you right now, at least where I'm at, my prices have gone up when it comes to grocery prices for sure, but for a bunch of different other things. Now, what else did you say? Utilities went down. That's good, and that can be true, but people are reporting even with utilities that they're paying more for heat this winter. On top of that, one of the things I've covered when it comes to AI and data centers being built, I just covered this not too long ago in a stream where I said, AI needs to be regulated domestically. Well, these data centers are being built in these towns, and it changes the dynamic of the town when it comes to demands for water. You need running, flowing water for electricity, obviously, and then that jacks up the electricity cost. This administration is very pro AI. I don't know if you've noticed that. And one of the problems with that is when these data centers are built, the companies that build them there, they use the power, and then guess who pays for that increase in energy demand? The people living in that town. You would expect the company to be stuck with that kind of a bill, but in fact, we are living in a crony capitalist society rather than a proper capitalist society, and so it's always the poor people stuck footing the bill. It's like this ass backward system, and so the companies, they just pay their electric bill as normal, but everybody else living around these AI data centers have now been reporting an increase in their electricity bill by 20 to 30%, which of course equates to $30 to $50 a lot of times extra per month. So it's not all good like you're making it out to be. There are a lot of problems with this administration. And I don't have TDS. I voted for Trump, and I'm supportive of some stuff he's done. But my overall narrative on this channel is he's not living up to his promises. And for young people especially, we're not in a golden age. We thank you. Good luck from here, says Howard. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Musk was only supposed to head Doge for. I know, yes, it was limited with Doge. It was. He said it from the beginning. It wasn't long term. Yeah, and then they were discussing extending that though for double the time, and then that disappeared, and then Doge essentially evaporated. The stock market is being pumped, says Ed. Yeah, that could be true too. I mean, we saw that with Biden. The stock market was pumped with Biden as well. That could be true as well. Yeah. I'm snowbirding in Arizona, living the dream. Thank you again. Nice, man. Arizona's a great. AI has almost sold me actually on moving to Phoenix. I literally asked Grok AI. I said, Grok, I want to move. Where should I move? I want to move somewhere super conservative. I want to move somewhere where it's still warm year round because I'm a big gardener. I want to move somewhere where there's, I don't want to freeze my ass off. I want to move somewhere where it's still warm, year round gardening, Grok, super conservative. And Grok was like, oh, you should go to Phoenix. And it sold me. It almost sold me on it. One day, maybe, Howard. Gen Z is lazy, though. Gen Z, I disagree with that. Gen Z is not lazy. Gen Z is unmotivated, and almost rightfully so. And I'm not going to ever, as a millennial, talk down the Gen Z guys. I believe in Gen Z guys, and I believe, from my experience with them, that they're going to change the world. I believe that they're going to change America and possibly save America. And one of the ways they're going to do that is just by recognizing the fact that the systems are corrupt and need to be burned down and reformed. And so with Gen Z, the problem is you have unmotivated Gen Z men because they've been told their whole life that if they're a man, that they're evil and that they're a detriment to society. And that's from our liberal institutionalized education system ruining them early on. On top of that, you're in a current dilemma right now where I've covered this at length, so I won't harp on it too long, but I'll refresh everyone's memory here. AI is replacing people. H-1B visas, I'm going to cover in a second, allowing Indians to come in, replace people. So if you're a Gen Z American, you're not motivated. You're looking at everything and you're realizing your country hates you and is working against you. And Gen Z men, you'll find they're very patriotic and nationalistic in a lot of ways. They love America. They love the idea of restoring America to its glory. So it's really unfair for them, truthfully. And the problem with AI too is it is now on average for a Gen Z man, it takes 1,200 online applications on average per Gen Z man to receive one job interview. And this is because corporations like Walmart, Target, Costco, Publix, etc., are now using AI to filter all of their online applications and to filter them for specific keywords and to rule them out for the lack of any keywords that they want, to rule them out for any little mistake they make without a notification, by the way. And so what it's like to be a Gen Z man right now, and young millennial guys, because millennials are, of course, a lot of time facing the issues too. What it's like to be a young man right now is you wake up, you apply to 30 places online throughout the course of 3 or 4 hours. You drafted a resume, you submit it to a bunch of corporations online. You can't go in person and shake their hand because when you do, they say apply online. So you do, and then you never hear back from any of them. So what are they supposed to do? Is my question. I'm booming, says Tom. Very, very nice. Ride the pony you're on, says Howard. Democrats' response will be 4x a bigger disaster. Yep, it will be. You are touching on a specific area of immunology that has gained significant attention in peer-reviewed literature over the last 2 years. The shift towards Ig antibodies after repeated mRNA. I haven't mentioned any. I'm sure somebody else in chat's talking about COVID. I haven't really talked about COVID. The obsession with fuel prices is kind of gay, says taking notes. It's not gay. It's justified, but I've mentioned this before. Fuel gas costs only account for anywhere between 2 to 4% of the average American's annual expenses. So it's not worth harping on too much. And I do not talk about gas prices all that much on this channel, but I notice them, and it is somewhat important because people expect with a conservative, even liberals capitulated on this idea last January when Trump was getting sworn in. They said, I hope it's worth it, the cheaper gas and the lower grocery prices for women to have less rights now. Which, of course, I'd respond, it is, bitch. Thank you. But the bottom line is now, of course, we haven't seen any of that come into fruition. So I'm just wholly disappointed. But the bottom line is people expect it. And when it doesn't happen, it does look bad. It looks bad that the gas prices aren't as low as people expected them to be yet. Now we'll see what happens with the Venezuelan oil and stuff. I think that'll take another year or two, but by the end of Trump's term, I do expect gas prices to be pretty low. I decide what to buy by the weight cost ratio. Electric is up, says taking notes. It is. Yeah. That's why I was ranting about the data centers, AI data centers, and utility costs. They may be down for some people, but what I'm hearing is reports of people paying more for heat, and if you have the unfortunate privilege of living near an up-and-coming data center for AI, your electricity bill is about to skyrocket. Oh, okay, I see. We got to get rid of Zach-tastic. Zach-tastic, first of all, you're an absolute cucked idiot. I literally just talked about Epstein. Not everything is not everything is we're going to talk about Epstein 24/7 in every video. I literally just talked about it 5 minutes ago. Why don't you fucking learn how to rewind or watch the video back if you want to hear me talking about Epstein? I talk about it at length. But because you sat there and spammed that much, you are officially deported from American Advocates. An ICE agent has found you and has introduced your face to concrete. You've been shackled. You're now being sent to Alligator Alcatraz to be deported. No more will you be recognized here in American Advocates. You're gone. You're deported. We're sending you to sub-Saharan Africa to rot. No spammers allowed in this chat. Best thing Trump could do is devolve the federal. Yep, I agree. AI will replace all the call centers. It will. Call centers should be outlawed. Yeah, call centers should be outlawed. I kind of agree with that. I used to be a debt collector too, so trust me, I agree. Ignorance gone to sea. The Democrats' propaganda is failing badly. It is, but we're going to see some Republican propaganda tomorrow with his State of the Union address speech, and that's kind of what I'm talking about here. I'm just putting everyone on to the propaganda we're going to be introduced to tomorrow by by President Trump. What's real, what's not. So, because some stuff he's done good, like I said, but there's been a lot of issues here. You would be stupid if you think the GOP is any different. The GOP politicians are increasingly blending in with the corruption of the Democrat ones, yes. But the GOP party, the conservative ideology, is radically different from the liberal ideology. So it's important to remain conservative. Never give up on conservative values. Never give up on being socially and fiscally conservative. Christian nationalism, conservatism, right? These are important values. But the politicians who we elect to uphold those values and enforce them, that's the problem, for sure. Went off to the Stony Lonesome. Be interested in what he has to say about Iran. Actually, I do have that listed soon. We're going to talk about... I'm not a Middle East specialist, but I will be covering it somewhat. His State of the Union will be great. Just ask him. Yeah, exactly. Correct. Love versus hate, easy to see. Yeah, it is. It is, Master K. Yep, it is. At this point, I mean, you really have to be an immoral person, I think, to be identifying with liberal ideology as a whole. That's just where I'm at with that, though. I'm a Christian. I'm a Protestant, born-again Christian. I'm a conservative, socially and fiscally. The answer is clear to me. You just need to set working eyes, and you need to see. We got to see what they want somewhat. We got hints of that with Biden, right? I don't want any of that, right? But at the same time, if my Republican politicians aren't going to represent me, I don't want them either, you know? So, now, just to continue on, to wrap that up, I was mentioning crony capitalism. I've discussed the real wage growth and how it continues to fail to match pace with inflation. So essentially, our water levels are rising. If you're Gen Z, millennials, our water levels are rising. This is called inflation, and our real wage growth is like our floaty, and it's continually working less and less. We are slowly drowning via inflation and a cost of living crisis, and no administration seems to know how to handle it. I put this down too because this is important. This is very important. This is one of those social aspects that I don't get into too much on this channel, but it weighs heavy on my heart. Young men aren't marrying. They're not buying homes. They're not finding good jobs. They're literally unable to find good jobs, and they're not motivated to do much of anything anymore. Government spending continues to seem to be prioritized to foreign nations and anyone other than Americans. And yeah, that's our current situation right now when it comes to this administration. In all honesty, they're dropping the ball. A few good things have come from them, but overall, this administration's dropping the ball for young people. And that's part of the factor here. And I get a lot of angry MAGA chatters because it's like they're older. So they go, "What are you talking about, kid? The Dow Jones hit 50,000 recently. Don't you get it? We're in a golden age." It's like you don't get it. You just don't get it. It's a huge generational divide right now that's happening. And ultimately, I think it's going to be a good thing for this country that it's occurring. But there's a lot of friction right now in the conservative aisle. The Skynet is coming. Judgment Day is upon us, says David Campbell. Iran burned the Baal statue and Israel got pissed. Interesting. They've gone quite insane. Palantir is Skynet. Yeah. Did I mention Palantir yet? I don't think I did. I think I have that as a bullet point for what I want to talk about. But yeah, Palantir, that's another one. I mean, that's kind of what happened with this whole guys under Doge, right? And the corruption, Doge, Elon Musk, Palantir. It's like, Not only did Elon get ousted from Doge, essentially, someone pointed out the fact that it was never supposed to be a permanent position for Elon because it can't be legally, which is true. But I still view it as Elon was ousted from Doge, and both sides of the aisle didn't really want him fishing around as in depth as he wanted to. They didn't want him to find too much. On top of that, Palantir kind of used Doge to sneak in and kind of implement itself in our government. And Palantir is, AI surveillance state, basically. It's creating profiles on people based off of assessed risk, So it's pretty insane. It's pretty rough. Not good. And this administration is not going to be the one that regulates AI like it needs to either. And I've harped on that before. We need domestic, at the very least, domestic AI regulation for the preservation of America to ensure we aren't ushered into an AI surveillance state, and to ensure that AI doesn't replace Americans. You know what I mean? Like, the fact of the matter is, I use AI. I use Grok and stuff. It's helpful. It scours the internet at a speed that I never could. It can research at a speed that would take me my entire lifetime to do. So it's useful, and I'm pro AI in that regard to a degree. But domestic AI needs to be regulated from the standpoint of its AI's creation is here to help and benefit humanity. It's supposed to assist us at most. The fact of the matter is, we're staring down the barrel of AI replacing very likely 50% of our workforce in the next 5 to 7 years. And that's not even all bad. I love the idea of female dominated industries that are useless to our society, like human resource departments, for instance. Those are going to evaporate. That's a net positive on society. That's a net positive for men and the workforce. But a lot of these jobs, it's like these are Americans at the end of the day that are going to be replaced by a robot chatbot AI. That makes no sense. If AI is supposed to help us, replacing us is the least helpful thing it can do. And that's what's going to happen, though. And, the bottom line is it won't end with white collar jobs. It won't end with the call centers being replaced or with, HR departments being replaced. It will bleed over into blue collar jobs. I saw a chatter when I was discussing this mention, I thought he was doing so ironically and humorously. He said, well, I don't know, dude. Those AI robot drywall hangers are pretty scary. I laughed. I said, yeah, right. Like, because I was talking in regards of the trade schools and how young men should go into trades. I was referencing trades. And I said, you won't see an AI plumber. And I still stand by that. I don't think you will. I think plumbing's too complex for AI to ever do perfectly. But he mentioned the AI drywall hangers. I thought he was kidding, so I just laughed and played along. I wound up 2 days later remembering his chat, and it bothered me. And I said, you know what, let me Google that to see if he was actually kidding. He wasn't. There are AI robots that hang drywall now. And that's scary because people think, well, there won't be human debt collectors. There won't be human customer service agents, a lot of whom are Indians anyway overseas. It's not even Americans. There won't be an HR department anymore with annoying catty women who bitch and moan at men for saying the wrong thing in the workplace, right? That's a net positive in some regard. But the bottom line is the robots. There are robots in humanoid form or in some robotic form that will replace people hanging drywall. That should be a human job strictly. I don't care how extra efficient the robot is. At some point, we need to put an end to that. And we need to say, hey, humans are the most important thing about a country, right? Efficiency is great, but if it comes at the expense of humans benefiting from it, it's no longer great. So, and this administration is not going to do it. They view it as a technological advancement, and they think it's a positive overall. And they don't see the harm in it, I don't think. It's also a semi-greed motivated motive as well from Trump because he stands to be making money in a lot of ways from the development of AI. So I don't remember all these people bitching when Biden was in charge, says Gary the Snail. Bitching about what though? It's going to happen. It's going to replace about 80% of jobs eventually, says Tom Colby. Yeah, I agree. I said that too. I actually think it could be higher than that. And I foresee a future if we don't regulate it now. I foresee a future where AI replaces 80%, like you said. I actually said 90% in my last stream. But even if it is 80%, that would mean universal basic income. And that's a disaster. That essentially it nukes the middle class. It eliminates the classes, and it basically creates a poor and rich dynamic where 99% of the population is poor now and has no chance to ever develop wealth, which defeats the purpose of a free market economy, capitalism, and America in general. I foresee a future of serfdom and universal basic income. The government hands you $2,000 a month to live, pay your bills, and then assigns you an AI that you manage, and it does the work while you manage it. And then the government that's how the government justifies paying the UBI to you. And that is serfdom. That's just AI, electronic, robotic serfdom. And that's a scary future, but it's very possible. We're staring down the barrel of it now. It could very likely only be 12 to 20 years away in totality. And we could see the effects much sooner. Like I said, I think 50% of jobs could be eliminated in the next 7 years. And yeah, Trump will probably mention AI to some degree in his State of the Union address speech, and he'll do so positively. And the fact of the matter is, I view AI as somewhat positive, but potentially one of the most harmful and catastrophic things that people embrace overall. And from a military standpoint, we cannot regulate AI. I'm not for that. Just from the simple standpoint of other countries won't do it. China won't regulate their AI at all. And so we must unfortunately go down the route of developing military AI more and more, and that's already scary enough. But from a domestic standpoint, we have to put Americans first, and that doesn't always mean prioritizing us over foreign interests. It means in this case prioritizing us over AI as well, and that's not going to happen with Trump, unfortunately. I'm going to try and catch up on chat before I move forward here. Exactly, AI is good as a tool. Yep, it should be an advanced Google search thing. And in some ways, I'm pro AI in robot form as well, obviously. But we just cannot allow it. Just simply, I know it's not free market. It's not typical traditional conservative free market of me to say we need to regulate it. But this is one of those things where it's like it's the rare exception where you need to embrace nationalism, like social nationalist socialism. This is one of those examples of that, truthfully. And it's because the threat is a robot. It's AI. So it is what it is. How can you say the president's speech will be a disaster when he hasn't given it yet? Because I've endured an entire year under President Donald Trump now, and I've seen the good and bad. And Trump has not changed his rhetoric at all to match the level of productiveness of his administration. And so his rhetoric is cutesy and funny and humorous, and I love the rage bait on the liberals. But at this point, this administration has been lackluster. It's gotten a few good things done, but it's dropped the ball overall. And it's going to be painfully cringe to watch him stand up there and use the same funny, cutesy, inflammatory rhetoric and talk like it's a frat party, which worked on the campaign trail, and everyone ate it up, and I loved it then. But it's going to be kind of cringe to watch it when I'm in the back of my mind thinking, well, my cost of living hasn't gone down. I still can't own a home. I'm experiencing an affordability crisis. I'm not being prioritized as the youth of America. Gen Z is fucked. And we're about to go to war in Iran. We're still funding Ukraine. Everyone cares about foreign interest and prioritizes everything overseas over me. And, you botched the Epstein files release. AI is not being regulated. It's replacing us. You're pro H-1B visas, et cetera, et cetera. That's why it's going to be a disaster. John, ever heard of deflation? Rumpelstiltskin. Your social services will be run by AI. Yeah. We need to, I'll say that. I'll talk about that some other time. So was nuclear power, but see how that went. Would deflation be a good thing? No. Well, not in the shorter midterm. It wouldn't. No, it would be a deflation. Deflation. It could potentially be a disaster. In all honesty, I mean, we could hit depression levels in our economy if that happens, right? So it's like it's a tough question. It's a tough question to ask. It's a tough question to answer. In the long run, it could reset the economy and be a good thing because, first of all, in the Great Depression, if you're prepared for depression level events, which I might be actually as a business owner, more millionaires were made during the Great Depression than in any other time frame. But for most Americans, it's pure hell. And deflation can cause a whole host of economic problems for quite a long time. Deflation at a high level. Oh, we lost connection there for a second. It looks like deflation. Too much deflation would ruin Trump's administration. I think he would be blamed for it. AI will develop future AI. Yeah, it could. That's even worse. The Skynet is coming. Judge Day is upon us. Military countries have to keep up. Yeah, we do. National debt is set to grow to $64 trillion over the next 10 years. The nonpartisan CBO said, citing a jump in annual deficits that owes in part to tax cuts enacted by Trump. International Scout Harvester said that. Yeah, the thing is, our national debt's not being prioritized. It's truthfully not being prioritized properly by any administration, and it hasn't been prioritized properly by any administration in the last 55 years. This is a multi-administration bipartisan issue. They've all just mismanaged the American economy. They've sold us overseas. They've sold our country away, and they drag raced on our economy for their own gain and sacrificed all future generations to do so. It's disgusting. All these problems we had are all these problems when he was in charge too. Said, oh yeah, well yeah, trust me. I didn't have a YouTube channel yet, but I was complaining about Biden all the time and to my friends and everything. That is a disaster on a scale I can't even imagine, says 2009 Lifeguard. Yes, it is. It's hard to imagine, but you won't have to imagine it for long, unfortunately. It could very likely be upon us. John Connors was not intended to be a documentary. Yeah, I know. I agree. The genie is out of the bottle as far as AI, says Howard. It is. And I'll tell you this. I have not given up hope when it comes to America and AI at all either. I think human consciousness will rise, and I think we can prevent it from I think we can prevent that future, and I think more people are becoming aware of that future. So I have not given up hope on that either. Never take the black pill. It takes no courage to be a coward. It takes no courage to be a pessimist. It only takes courage to hope, right? So never take the black pill. You must always have the courage to hope. I believe it's possible, but again, this is to talk about Trump's State of the Union address speech tomorrow and to point out where he's gone wrong. As a Gen X, I lived in the best time in modern history. I still have my old 73 Ford. Nice. 73 Ford 351 XB hardtop. You did live in a good time as a Gen Xer. You absolutely did. You got to experience the 80s and the 90s. You got to experience the 90s as an adult. I was like a wee little kid in the 90s. The 90s was the last great decade of America, unfortunately. All right. Moving on. I wanted to say, let's see here. I wanted to cover the Trump DOJ, and I wanted to discuss, tie in Epstein with that, and I wanted to discuss the deep state and Pam Bondi, because this is another topic where I don't know how Trump is going to approach this, actually. I think I can predict a lot of what Trump will say in his State of the Union address speech tomorrow. But this is one of those interesting ones. This is a big black mark on the Trump administration as a whole, right? You have to come to terms with the fact that we are now over a year of Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and originally Dan Bongino taking their positions. We've had no deep state arrests, and we have had nothing but botched investigations, botched prosecutions, botched grand jury indictments, and we've had no justice being served to this country. And it's a big problem. It's a massive problem, again, for the youth. I say this all the time. If you ever want the recipe for an American revolution, look no further than a cost of living crisis mixed in with a two-tier justice system that only punishes the poor. And we're virtually at that point right now, which is why I warn against this so much. I don't want a violent revolution in this country, but what's going to happen is if we continually see corruption flying freely in our American political system with no punishment for it, other than strongly worded letters from Pam Bondi, and all we ever see are poor people being punished by the legal system while our cost of living gets worse, that's what's going to happen. And with the Epstein Files Transparency Act being signed into effect, Trump was forced to sign that. He continues to insist by the way, that this is a tragedy. This is the worst, most harmful narrative that he's concocted. I mean, originally in his cabinet meeting, he tried to say, you're not MAGA if you want the Epstein files released. One of the worst things he could have said. And really, that combined with Doge being dismantled the way that it was the beginning of the end of MAGA, in my opinion, and the Trump administration. Excuse me. And so what we've seen a list of co-conspirators and perpetrators pop up in these files. Commonly appeared names like Bill Clinton, Les Wexner, who they tried to redact on some pages, by the way, and other names. We've seen photos now that are pretty incriminating and damning, worthy of at least an investigation. And we've seen responses now from other countries covering Epstein and dealing with it. Britain, who I hate to give props to ever, Britain is dealing with this better than we are. Peter Mandelson was unofficially arrested today. He wasn't put in handcuffs, but he was let out of his residency by police officers, right? Former Prince Andrew has been interrogated and investigated over his involvement with Epstein, and there's heavy rumors over in Britain that it's actually pretty likely that Prince Andrew will face prison time, or at least a prosecution that could lead to that. Peter Mandelson, being arrested today, again, he was stripped of his lordship, forced to denounce his title, forced to give up positions. Prince Andrew, of course, was pretty much denounced by the royal family, and now we know why. And so Britain has actually handled this better than we have. This is a big black stain on the Trump administration. And when it comes to the Trump DOJ being so toothless, not a single deep state arrest, not a single attempt to really even look into the Epstein files or investigate it. That trial that took place recently with Pam Bondi, not a trial, sorry, where she was testifying, though, that was embarrassing. Pramila Jayapal, a Democrat who I despise and think should be deported out of this country, sat there and made Pam Bondi look like an absolute jackass, an absolute villain. The Epstein victims, the identified victims sitting behind Pam Bondi, stood up, raised their hands, and identified themselves as victims. Pam Bondi and this DOJ on record saying, if there's Epstein victims out there, we would love to talk to them. That was the narrative last year. Well, these victims stood up just a few weeks ago, and they identified themselves as victims. And Pramila Jayapal said, raise your hand if this Trump DOJ has not interviewed or asked you any questions or bothered to talk to you. They all raised their hands. This administration, this DOJ, has done nothing to get to the bottom of it, has done nothing in the name of justice. I have examples here that I've covered in the past on this channel where I was initially excited. I thought, yes, finally some justice. Letitia James, right? I've looked at Letitia James' papers, her real estate papers for mortgage fraud, et cetera, what they have her on. You can't say for 100% certainty that Letitia James knowingly committed mortgage fraud, but when you look at all of the evidence, some of the public records and files on Letitia James, I would say there's a 95% chance that Letitia James is guilty of mortgage fraud, which is not the worst crime in the world, but the irony is it's pretty much the same thing she went after Trump for during the Biden administration. And somebody like Letitia James deserves prison time for weaponizing the using lawfare against Trump and weaponizing the legal system against a former president. It was gross. It was disgusting to watch. And so you would expect Trump to want that retribution, and I think he does. But Pam Bondi's in charge. And Pam Bondi is the most incompetent attorney general I've probably ever seen in my life. Maybe I ever will see. Hopefully she's the most incompetent I ever see. I hope it only gets better from here, right? But in regards to Letitia James and her mortgage fraud case, inside of 1 week during this second term, Pam Bondi failed to convince a grand jury to indict Letitia James twice inside of 1 week. There's a saying that you can indict a ham sandwich using a grand jury. Yet Pam Bondi failed twice in 1 week. Worse yet, I have numbers that make her look even worse. In Trump's first term, in 2016, the first year, 2016, 150,000 grand jury indictments were made. And out of that number, there were only six scenarios where a grand jury refused to indict people. 6 in 1 year. Pam Bondi managed to fail to indict Letitia James using a grand jury twice in 1 week. That is embarrassing. And Pam Bondi is a complete dud. And I'm proud, at least, I feel vindicated and validated on this channel with my prediction early on that Pam Bondi was going to be an abysmal failure. Meanwhile, I kept putting up polls on this channel with these overwhelmingly supportive results of Pam Bondi. It was at points in time I put up these polls with thousands of votes on them, mind you, and people were saying, 78% think Pam Bondi's doing a wonderful job. I don't know what people have been on when it comes to Pam Bondi, but she is the worst attorney general I've ever seen, and it's so evident at this point. Need I remind you, because the argument that I hear against this is, well, good cases take time to build. It just takes time. Give her time. It takes time. She needs rock solid cases. First of all, I would just immediately point you once again to Letitia James and say she failed to achieve an indictment twice in 1 week, right? There's nothing rock solid about this bitch. But on top of that, need I remind you, when you go back to the Biden presidency with Merrick Garland, inside of the first year, they were already prosecuting and borderline imprisoning former Trump admin officials from the first term. So it can be done quicker. It's just not being done. And it's pure copium at this point from MAGA cheerleaders to assume that Pam Bondi is just building rock solid, impervious cases that she's going to spring on the Democrats over the coming months, right in time for the midterms. I think that's copium. It would be brilliant strategy if it was true, by the way. You spring these cases up 3-4 months before midterms, you get results quickly, people vote Republican, finally justice. Will that happen? I put it as a 99% chance that it won't. This is not Pam Bondi doing her due diligence and slowly building cases and doing extensive research. She's incompetent. She's proven to be incompetent. Another way she proved to be incompetent, failing to prosecute and imprison James Comey. All you have to do is look back on the past year to understand what's actually happening here. She's allowing Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche to take the lead on a lot of cases. Todd Blanche was a lifelong Democrat until 2024, and now he's the Assistant Attorney General, Deputy Attorney, second most powerful in the Trump DOJ, right? On top of that, her appointing of Lindsay Halligan over the Letitia James and James Comey incidents. She appointed Lindsay Halligan in error, and this got the cases dismissed. Was that on purpose? Can't say for sure, but it doesn't look good. She's been nothing but an incompetent embarrassment. So no, she's not building rock solid cases. I vehemently disagree with the MAGA cheerleaders on that one. This is just her sitting around doing absolutely nothing. And justice under Pam Bondi will not be happening for the deep state. So how Trump will approach this in his State of the Union address, I don't know, because it's a black mark. And I mean, the narrative spinning on that is going to have to be insane. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it in a morbid way almost, because I don't know how he addresses this. The only thing we're getting from this DOJ essentially is Don Lemon being arrested. Maybe he'll bring that up, I guess. But that's not a deep state guy. What Don Lemon did is gross, and I actually would love to live in America where somebody like that goes to prison for 2 years or something, or gets a hefty fine at least. But don't hold your breath for either of those to happen to Don. And Don Lemon being the biggest name that this DOJ has managed to get is also embarrassing. I mean, nobody takes Don Lemon seriously. So maybe Trump leans on that, I guess. I don't know. But the bottom line is we're not getting deep state arrests, and this pisses off Americans in general. And at this point, I think even the boomers, even the Gen Xers are turning on Pam Bondi. A lot of diehard MAGA finally turning on Bondi. Where have you guys been for the past year? I don't know. But I've hated Bondi. I'm going to be that gatekeeper. I have hated Bondi since May, even a little bit before then, in all honesty. How he's going to address this topic, I really don't know. But it's like the Epstein files were on her desk, then they disappeared. Nothing was in them, it turned out. Investigation closed. Now they're public, full of material, worthy of investigations and possibly prosecutions and imprisonment for people. We're not getting that, She lost the Epstein files, then they were magically found when Congress compelled her to find them. And now it turns out there's tons of investigatory worthy material in them. But we're not getting that. So it's like, this is a disaster, this DOJ. This is a disaster. Kash Patel is popping bottles for Olympic athletes rather than, doing his due diligence as the FBI director. It's a disaster. I'll take a look at more chats. Double tap your screen if you haven't already to like to stream. It really helps the stream perform well in the algorithm. All this revolution talk is from people who don't got kids to worry about. Hey, I am the kid. I mean, I'm not really a kid anymore. But it's the revolution talk is coming from the kids that you're worrying about. I'm not really in favor of a violent revolution breaking out in this country. But the bottom line is something's going to happen. The tension is building. And if you don't like that reality, then go live in a fantasy world. But, that's the bottom line, man. Tim, that's just what it is. Kids are grown up and I own my own home and retiring soon, says Tom. John Stevens says, you're still paying rent to the government on that house you think you own. Yeah, the property taxes. I'm telling you, James Fishback, running for governor of Florida, going to eliminate property taxes, amongst other things. Look into him. I love that guy. But yeah, property taxes are criminal. All right, let me see here. Pam Bondi acted like a child. Pam Bondi acted like a woman. And that's part of the problem with that position as well. And I've covered that at length on this channel here too. I don't care how it sounds. The attorney general position for the United States should not be in the hands of a woman. This is what you get when you allow a woman in that position. You get deflections, which is what we saw while she was testifying, while she was making her statements. We saw just deflections. We saw her just talking about Merrick Garland, the attorney general before her. We saw her deflect to Biden. We saw her do anything other than take responsibility for the lack of work that she hasn't gotten done. And that's what women do. It's never their fault. They never take accountability. It's always someone else's fault. It's always the Dow Jones is doing good. You should be focused on that instead. Why do you care about Epstein so much? Why didn't Merrick Garland release the files? Why didn't Biden release the files if they're so important? And it's like, really, the answer to the question is simple. Why didn't you want to release the files? Why haven't you released all of the files? Why have you left victims' names unredacted? Why did you try to redact co-conspirators' names? Well, did you ask Merrick Garland that? That's a woman for you. Women don't belong in politics in general. Apologies there. Who's on the camera? My iPod. Yeah, women do not belong in politics in general. That's the bottom line. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that notion, but it's true. Really, the only position women belong in politics, politically speaking, is as ambassadors, in my opinion. And this administration has bragged about having so many women in their cabinet and in the administration. And where has it gotten us? I also put this down too. Antifa's not being targeted. Rogue Democrat state governors are only receiving strongly worded letters, and only low-level drug dealers are being punished. And that's also true too. Part of the thing that really enrages me is when I see these violent riots that have been encouraged by rogue Democrat state governors to occur take place, and I see rocks being thrown at law enforcement agents, and I see all kinds of unruly behavior. And do you see a whole lot of arrests for it? No, you don't. You see them occasionally, but not at the level that they should be occurring at. And you see Pam Bondi going on the news, and she's actually used the term now, which blew my mind, like tone deaf. And she literally said, well, we sent Mayor Jacob Frey a strongly worded letter. That's what we have from this Trump DOJ. So how will Trump cover this topic on the State of the Union address? I'm looking forward to it because it's beyond me at this point. One of the other things I have here too, corrupt low-level district court judges have cucked this administration every step of the way, and nothing has been done about it. Now, Trump is going to likely cite this as a problem that his administration has faced during his State of the Union address. I actually have examples here. In January 2025, a D.C. District Court judge issued a TRO blocking the administration's federal funding freeze on grants and loans. In February 2025, a Maryland District Court granted a nationwide preliminary injunction halting the enforcement of DEI-related executive orders. In late January 2026, a Rhode Island District Court judge temporarily blocked efforts to end deportation protections for certain groups. On February 13, 2026, Judge Vernon Broderick in New York issued a preliminary injunction stopping the withholding of $10 billion from states like New York. We've seen this administration try this, withhold federal funding from liberal states that are acting corruptly and trying to defy the will of the people. As of February 23rd, 2026, a D.C. District Court judge temporarily halted housing policies for transgender incarcerated individuals under Executive Order 14.168. In early February 2026, courts in multiple districts blocked retaliation against protected speech and denial of federal grants. In January 2026, a D.C. District Court temporarily enjoined parts of an executive order on elections, including citizenship checks. They're fighting Trump every step of the way, and nothing's being done about that, and that's infuriating. And somebody earlier in my chat was referencing how President Trump knows a lot of history on past U.S. presidents. Andrew Jackson is cited as one of the specific ones, right? Well, Andrew Jackson had his record of ignoring the Supreme Court. He did that, literally. And it's time for Trump to do that. And so Trump's going to use this as the excuse in his State of the Union address. He's going to talk about it, no doubt, the weaponization of low-level district courts against him. But the bottom line is it's just time for him to ignore them. And I've been waiting for him to make that decision all year long, and he hasn't yet. And he continues to abide by the courts. And it's infuriating. Uh, I also wrote this down too because this also grinds my gears. I don't know if you guys remember this, but the Seditious Six, that was a big deal when it was happening. These six Democrat politicians coming together to record this message for their social medias where they encouraged the U.S. military to ignore all unlawful orders that are given to them. And what's gone on with that? What's happened to Senator Mark Kelly? What's going on with the Seditious Six? They're not being punished either. And that just bothers me. This DOJ in general, it's the worst DOJ I've ever seen. It's completely toothless. It has no teeth. The Democrats know it now, and they're just taking advantage of it. Ice Variable says, "Wow, I'm the last one to defend Bondi, but you're a fucking asshat." Well, hey, if you can't handle the truth, there's other channels out there for you. Heard that only 2% of the files have been released. We're not sure. We're not sure. They try to say it's, half of them, but we're not sure, are we? I've heard that there's like 40 terabytes worth of possible files. So yeah, you could be right. What did Garland ever do but try to catch Trump? I don't know, but what he did was more effective. I'll tell you that much. I'm not saying it was good what Merrick Garland did, but what he did was effective. I want an effective U.S. Attorney General playing on the conservative side of the aisle, and that's not Pam Bondi. You speak of women picks. Barrett, I knew was a bad choice. Yeah, Amy. Yeah, the Supreme. Yep. It's true. Trump picked her too. This is typical of Trump. He has the habit of picking all the worst people. That's one of his biggest mistakes. Did the judge stop the conviction of the Milwaukee judge? The jury found. Oh yeah, Judge Hannah Dugan. I haven't kept up with that story. We'll see. I'll look into that actually. I imagine the State of the Union will be very patriotic because it is going too hard. It's going too hard to spin his year, says Tom. Gotta rack out. You young cats carry on. I support you. Good night. Hey, good night, Howard. Thanks for tuning in, man. Thanks again for the super chat. I really appreciate you. Please, if you haven't already, Howard, be sure to subscribe to the American Advocates. I don't recognize your name in this chat, so I'm not sure if you're a first-time viewer, but please subscribe. Turn on notifications. I'd love to have you in my chat more often. Thank you for your support. Appreciate you so much, man. And then here we go. Here's where I'm concluding. I'm going to wrap this stream up. All these failures of this Trump administration, right? What I have written down, that the lack of justice being served, the cost of living for young people not being addressed, all major issues. All the while, what we're going to see out of the State of the Union address is Trump bragging about the foreign policy stuff. He has to actually at this point because Trump has been largely distracted by foreign policy ever since around May of 2025. That was when we noticed that he was becoming increasingly more focused on foreign affairs, Iran, and the Ukraine-Russia war. And so he's going to have to go hard on this, and he's going to have to try to sell this to the American people as a success. He's going to bring up Thailand and Cambodia, a war that honestly I never cared about. He's going to bring up the Congo. Lovely, great, awesome to have the moral high ground and be the benevolent country we are, ending these foreign wars. But the bottom line is, this is going to be the worst part of his speech because he's going to tell us about how there's peace in the Middle East when we all know that there isn't. He's going to tell us that, it's a tough one with Ukraine and Russia, but it wasn't my war, which he's right. It's not his fault. It's not my war. That's Biden's war. Okay, what Biden did to this country and to the world, for that matter, was criminal. And if it happened it would have never happened with me. He's going to say that. And it's like he promised to end the Russia-Ukraine war, and he's failed. That's the bottom line. But we cut him some leeway because it's not his war, and we all know Biden was an idiot, and Biden is the reason why this is happening in Ukraine and Russia. But what's unjustifiable is the fact that we've been sending all of this money to Ukraine. This country that doesn't care about us has never done anything for us. Ukraine has done nothing to benefit America or Americans at all. They are the equivalent of a homeless beggar on the street. And not just a homeless beggar, but a homeless beggar that is full of fucking crime, corruption. A homeless beggar that steals from everyone around them. A homeless beggar that assaults people. That's what Ukraine is like. And all you have to do is look at the footage, the forced draft that they've had, where they just scoop up any guy walking on the street and force him to enlist. The corruption at the country level. Zelensky himself, his first initial appearance in our White House, where he dressed like a slob and showed up demanding money from us, and then acted ungrateful and put on an embarrassing public display where he basically was ranting about us not helping enough. Like, what the fuck was that? And so this country, Ukraine, I don't give a shit about. I just don't care about Ukraine at all. As far as I'm concerned, Russia has failed, and Russia has proven that their military is largely a paper tiger. And so I like that this war happened just for that reason alone. We now know Russia is not the threat that we've made them out to be. I actually consider Russia to be nothing more than a boogeyman. And in all honesty, when it comes to foreign policy, here's my stance on it. We shouldn't be sending all this money to Israel, to Ukraine. We shouldn't be funding NATO's defense. We shouldn't be sending money to Britain. We shouldn't be subsidizing Canada and generously buying all of their lumber and shit just to make sure their country stays afloat. We should be pulling all of those funds back and reallocating them into our country, to the American people, at a state level especially. You know, every time I hit a pothole, I know it's a state budget thing, but every time I hit a pothole, I think, gee, we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to other countries. And here I am driving on a piece of shit road that literally has made it so that every time I bring my car in for a yearly inspection, I'm hit with a $15 or $16 or $1,800 repair. I have to fix the tie rods on my car soon, and I'm going to do that. I'm not even going to bring it to a mechanic because I don't want to pay the price. But I have to fix tie rods, my bearings, all that. The roads suck. Our country sucks. People are poor. Everything's in a disastrous state in this country. Yet somehow we find a way to send hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign aid to countries that don't even care about us or don't even act grateful. Ukraine being one of the primary ones. And lately, I've been seeing this lack of gratitude from Jews and from Israeli people, right? Like, Israel exists as a country because of us. And they only continue to exist as a country because of us. And why is it that I'm seeing all of these people who are clearly Israel supporters tell me that we treat Israel like serfs, and that Israel would be happy to go to China instead? Like, fuck you then. If you're that ungrateful, and if you're that ungrateful that we protect if Israel's that ungrateful that we protect them and they demand more money from us, if that's the sentiment there, then fuck them. Fuck Ukraine especially as well. A country that literally has done nothing for us. You can argue Israel has done something for us. You can argue that, at least. With Ukraine, there's nothing. And at this point, I'm willing to categorize them all together. I think we should leave NATO. I think we should stop sending our money overseas in general. I think we should tell all of these former Western countries to fuck right off at this point. I've had it up to here with all of it. The state of our country is unacceptable for Americans. So I find it disgusting. And now we're going to have to deal with the State of the Union address with Trump, where he's going to be bragging about this stuff. Peace in the Middle East, which we all know is not true. There's going to be a regime change in Iran soon. If we wind up going to war with Iran, by the way, that's another $6 trillion that we're in debt to in this country. That tanks our economy, I think, for good at that point. But there it is. It's going to be a regime change in Iran. The Russia-Ukraine war is not going to end. Zelensky just made public statements. He just made public statements and said, you know what, I don't trust Trump and I probably never will. Fuck you. We've done nothing but give you money. You fucking midget fuck. Fuck Zelensky. Fuck Ukraine. I say at this point, we pull all aid from Ukraine and we throw them to the wolves of Russia, or the bears. They like their bears more. Let Russia keep what they've conquered. Tell Ukraine it's over. No more aid from us. The money stays here in America. And if you need to make peace with Russia, or they're just going to keep invading you. And that's the end of it. Because at the end of the day, Ukraine's done nothing for me as an American. Nothing. And they're never going to do anything for me as an American. And when it comes to Israel and Iran, I mentioned this earlier and I'll say it again. I recognize the inherent problem in the Middle East. First of all, I'm a born-again Christian, so I believe that there will not be peace in the Middle East until the very end times, which I don't believe we're currently in yet. And so with that promise looming overhead, I view it as pretty much a hopeless region, which is why I love the Monroe Doctrine so much. Time for us to withdraw from the rest of these countries, this world. Time for us to focus on ourselves. Let's focus on expansion in the Western Hemisphere. Let's focus on making America actually great again. And let's focus less on the Middle East, which is a hopeless region. On top of that, if our allies were actually our allies, like I mentioned earlier on in the stream, NATO, Britain, and Israel can deal with Iran. Sure, you want to tell me Iran's developing nuclear power to build and craft nuclear warheads? Yeah, that's a problem. I agree. Absolutely, I do. But, no, not even prove it. It's a problem. Good luck dealing with it. Why is it always America that has to spill blood for these wars? How about at that point we say, okay, maybe we won't withdraw all of our foreign aid. But you know what? Israel, NATO comprised of 33 or 27. It's a lot of countries. NATO comprised of dozens of countries. Israel, Britain, how about you send your soldiers to Iran then? How about you use your military to deal with Iran? You take out their nuclear capabilities. If your soldiers get hurt, we'll send a little bit of aid to you to help you deal with that issue there. Why doesn't that happen? Like, this is infinitely more Israel and NATO's problem, Iran. Infinitely more so than it is ours. The Monroe Doctrine that's why I love the Monroe Doctrine. It states as much. We're separated by oceans. We're on the literal other side of the world. But yet here we are in the forefront, like we are with everything, for countries that fucking hate us, for countries that grandstand publicly against us, for countries that the second we ask for something in return, like Greenland from Denmark, or the second we say, hey, we're going to apply some